Hello to everyone. I am Emmanuel from Italy, and but you know probably me better as Evil Dead Italia. Welcome to the Evil Dead Italia live podcast. This episode will talk about the many phase of the Book of the Dead, obviously the infamous Necronomicon Next Mortis from all the Evil Dead movie, and with us there will be a very cool guy that is Alberardi. He started the KOS props Facebook group, and I'm going to present you soon. Before starting, I would like to give my excuses because when planning the event, I was a little bit confused about time zones. So probably for the guys I'm going to interview, it is a day before the one I think. So the calendar event shows 16th of August, but for them is the 15th of August. So probably Ryan is not able to join us this evening. In case he would like to join after, obviously I'm very happy to make him enter. So without any further ado, I'm going to present you Al from the US. Hello Al, how are you?
What's going on, man?
I'm pretty fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Here in Italy is 2 a.m. o'clock,
2 in the
and
morning in Italy. Oh
yeah,
man. All
yeah, yeah.
right.
This is even the other reason for which I I mix stuff
So it is the
and
16th in Italy. Yeah, it's
is it,
funny. I make a joke with Kurt, who was one of the first members of the KOS and is responsible for one of the books we're going to look at today. I always joke when I talk to him. I usually say to him, "Hey, what's happening? What's the future like? Will I like it there?" Because he's always a day ahead of me. So yeah, I understand. It's a pain in the butt. So every time I talk to Kurt, it's always tomorrow. So he always like we joke. He's like, "Don't come, don't let it become the next day. The future sucks." Lots of Back to the Future jokes. So
you have to know that it's happened to me even with Nick Bassett. I was substantially I had a live with Nick Bassett from Ash vs Evil Dead. It was the
yeah,
first time I'm having a live with someone in New Zealand, and I completely missed out that it was the day before for him.
yeah,
So
it's all
and that's
crazy.
the
That was a great show, by the way.
yeah. Well, Nick is is a cool guy. He's a really cool guy,
I
and
enjoyed that broadcast. That was a lot. That was really cool.
I had some difficulties with his accent because he's have a strong New Zealand accent. So for me, it was a little bit more complex than handling English or American guys. But it was very cool. He told me a lot of.
The joke they always
Cool.
make is New Zealanders have very different vowels, so their vowel sounds are very, very different than what we use in the United States or in Canada. So it's very, very complicated.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So first of all, I didn't present you in a good way because let's say usually I have some kind of bio to read to study before, and I go to usually let's say it's not so easy because the people I interview until now, however, they have a website with some information but not a complex bio.
Yeah, they're all famous. I'm not,
Yeah,
so I don't have a bio somewhere.
yeah, yeah, but usually it's complex because the bio is
Yeah.
not usually more comprehensive. I mean, you cannot find all the stuff they did on IMDb, for example. So at the beginning of the interview, usually I ask them, "Can you tell me something about you?" I mean, can you talk me about you, something about your personal
Sure.
background, not just Evil Dead stuff. I mean,
Yeah, I'll give you a brief rundown of me. I actually was a technically I was a pro athlete. I competed for money, so I was a pole vaulter. So most of my life, the first 30 years of my life, was all about pole vaulting. I went to Georgia Tech briefly. I was the school record holder there, so I was an NCAA competitor in the American collegiate circuit. I went on and owned and operated with my father a coaching facility for pole vaulting, and I did that till I moved to Virginia with my wife. My father passed away shortly after that, and we shut down all of that, and I moved on from pole vaulting. But when I was at school and I wasn't pole vaulting, I didn't really know what I wanted to study, and I'd always had an inclination in art, so I actually got an art degree. So one of the things that I was always doing while I was doing track and field was graphic design. I did graphic design because I had Photoshop since about 1996. So I've always been kind of ahead of the curve with that. So graphic design came really easy for me. I worked with a lot of heavy metal bands, did a lot of album covers, and because I liked graphics, I was always really attracted to the paper props like the Indiana Jones Grail Diary and the Necronomicon and things like that. So I always wanted tangible full-size props from movies and stuff, and if there was a piece of paper or something that I really liked, I would go and try to make it. And so when I moved with my wife and I couldn't pole vault anymore and I didn't really have access to my friends and the hobbies and different things that I was doing, props sort of became my hobby. And so that's kind of how I started collecting props. I decided, since I now live with my wife, I'm going to build all the stuff that I didn't have or I couldn't afford. And one of the things I absolutely wanted to get into was making replica books. I wanted every fake book I've ever seen in a movie. And so it took me a long time to get to the Necronomicon, but with my background, I was able to take a really good approach, use a lot of the resources like the RPF back in the day when it was a website and not on social media. And so that was always a lot of like what my hobbies were. So I sort of took all the passion that I'd put into sports and sort of just dove headfirst into prop replicas. And I've been doing that pretty much ever since.
Okay,
That's a little
it's
background. That's
really cool.
how I got to be who I am now.
Okay, so given this background, when was the first time I mean, you get in touch with the Evil Dead franchise? I mean, how it happened?
Yeah, so there's actually two answers to that question. When I was a kid, I don't know how familiar you are with the American cable television and network television system. It's
No,
not quite the
not so
same as
much.
what you guys have in Europe with Sky TV and the broadcasted BBC stuff. So in America, when I was growing up, the late 80s, early 90s, there was most televisions had about 13 channels, and one of them never worked. And that were composed of network televisions like CBS, NBC, ABC, the very big corporations. And then there were some local channels that were regional, maybe a couple of states. We had one, Channel 11, which became the WB, which became the CW, which is what it was most commonly known as nowadays. But back in the day, we in the New York tri state area called it the WPIX. And every Saturday, they would show movies that really were cheap and crappy because they couldn't get a hold of them on HBO or whatever. They were the cheapest to get in syndication. So all the Cannon films, a lot of Charles Bronson, a lot of Chuck Norris, a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. And of course, we would get Army of Darkness. So the first time I got into Evil Dead, I was watching Saturday morning cartoons, and then in the afternoon they would show a matinee. And I remember Army of Darkness came on, and they always would announce who was in the movie. They'd be like, "And now, Channel 11 proudly presents Army of Darkness, starring Bruce Campbell." And I was like, "Oh, I know that name." And my dad was like, "Oh, that's the guy you like from Hercules and Xena." So I was like, "Oh, this will be cool." So I wanted to watch it because it reminded me of the guy I liked in Hercules and Xena. And so my first exposure to Evil Dead was Army of Darkness. And I immediately recognized the character. And here's the second answer, because I used to watch a cartoon that was CGI back in the early 90s called Reboot. It was about people who lived in your computer and they would play video games against the users like Tron.
Yeah,
One of the
yeah,
video games they played was a iteration of Mad Max, and one of the characters was blatantly Bruce Campbell as Ash, and all he said was groovy. And my dad said to me, "That's the guy. That's Bruce Campbell. That's who you like." And I'm like, "I don't get it." So I didn't figure out it was Ash till I saw Army of Darkness. So I was obsessed with Army of Darkness because it was so funny, and very much in the same vein as Hercules and Xena. And so I was all about that movie well into my 20s. I didn't actually see an an official Evil Dead, till I was in my 20s. But I was always a fan of the Ash character as he was portrayed in Army of Darkness. I thought that was Bruce at his Bruceiest, and I absolutely fell in love with that, and I wanted everything from that movie. So that's always been my passion, is the Army of Darkness, and that's why I like the show Ash vs. the Evil Dead so much, because I feel like it's the closest to that Ash. He's very, very funny and sarcastic, and kind of not a good hero at all. So I love that version of Bruce a lot. So, but my my second Evil Dead movie that I got into after that was the first Evil Dead, because I discovered that there were DVDs that were Necronomicons. This guy, where is it? They had the Necro DVDs, and so I immediately went to Fye, bought Evil Dead One, the Necro version, to get the Necronomicon, and that was my first exposure to pages and whatnot. And then I saw Evil Dead One, and I thought that was a great horror movie. I really liked the grittiness of that. And I didn't see Evil Dead 2 till later. And I've kind of always still gravitated towards Army of Darkness as my go-to. So that was always my thing. I loved everything about that movie.
So I mean, so you meet you meet the franchise when you are pretty young, or am I wrong? Right?
It was one of those things where, because it was called Army of Darkness, I didn't know it was an Evil Dead movie. It was a different company. They couldn't legally call it Evil Dead, but I was always like, I'd watch it on Channel 11, like I said, and they'd show the beginning, which has that animatic sequence where we get to see the Necronomicon and its pages, but the cover's different. And I didn't know back then when I was young, maybe, let's see if it was 1990, maybe like
3.
1994, 1995, it was on
Hmm.
TV. So I was like maybe 11 or 12. I didn't know that that was from Evil Dead 2 and that there were other movies. I was in Boy Scouts and everybody was watching Evil Dead 2 in like a sleepover situation, like an overnight where they would lock us up in like a rec hall or something, and we'd stay up all night and everybody was watching Evil Dead 2. It never occurred to me that those were the same movies until I saw Evil Dead 1, and then I started to figure out Army of Darkness is a continuation of those films, but not the same company, so they couldn't use the same name and everything. But yeah, like I said, I didn't see Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 till I was like 2022 when I was in college.
Okay, so we come to KOS, Knight of Sumeria. How that happened? I mean, I remember something like the TV show started, or maybe
Mhm.
it was ending. The show it was ending. I don't remember completely if the show was started since a year or the show was ending, because I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
about
you
giving you
got
some
it.
pictures.
So what was happening was the show was 2 seasons in, and it was a big hit, and everybody like myself got reinvigorated in Evil Dead and wanted to go in and start building props. The problem is most groups about Evil Dead are filled with horrible people. And I really had no patience for that. And so I left a lot of Evil Dead groups because I wanted to talk about the show, but not with any of them because they were very gatekeepy and just very not good fans, very toxic fans. And I kind of had my fill of groups that were that way. Star Wars is like that, and all these other places are like that. And I just kind of got sick of it. And they were announcing season 3. They released the picture of Dalton. You remember? And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
said, and he had the ring and the cuff and all that. And they said Dalton is a member of the Knights of Sumeria who will play a role in the 3rd season. And I remember when I read that, I went, huh, Knights of Sumeria. That'd be a good name for an Evil Dead group. So I just went into Facebook and made the group, didn't touch it. Then season 3 came out and was progressing, and I decided I wanted to make an Ash costume for um Halloween, and I had bought a Spirit of Halloween chainsaw and I wanted to convert it. So I went online to start looking for tutorials, and I found like 2 websites with static pictures from like 1998, and they were terrible. And then randomly on YouTube, I see a video and it says how to build an Evil Dead chainsaw, video 18 of 22 or whatever it was. And I found this guy with 32 followers named Brett, and he had been doing a 22-part making of video. And so I reached out to the guy immediately. I'm like, dude, I love you. You're the only dude who's doing any videos on how to make a chainsaw, and it's phenomenal. He was building at the time his saw that was called the Mutant. And so we got to talking, and I ended up calling him on the phone, and we were talking, and I knew immediately what I wanted to do. I said, you know what? I'm going to make my own Evil Dead group for prop builders because I couldn't find this guy. It took me a month to find this dude, and I had to dig into YouTube to find it. This is the kind of guy that needs to be out there where everybody can find him so that the community can benefit. And I'm going to make a group that behaves the way I want. And the Knights of Samaria was just sitting there, and I had it. So I said, Brett, you and I are going to start a Facebook group, and it's going to be for Evil Dead prop builders and for people who need Evil Dead props, and we're going to get the community what they need. I reached out to another guy on Twitter called Make Mia. His name's Gavin. He was a 3D
Yes.
modeler and maker, and we started working on the Trifari, and that was the first prop we put out. And people just started coming into the group, and the rest is history. We just started making prop after prop after prop for people, you know. And now Brett is the most widely respected chainsaw builder, you know, in the Evil Dead community. And I'm very, very happy that, you know, so many great builders, you know, Roger Allen Baker, Gavin, Kurt, you know, newer people to the group, guys like Peyton Sabo and Peyton Patron. So many great builders, guys who were kind of off in obscurity, who found a niche, guys like Paris, who was recently featured in an episode of Brett's YouTube series, guys like John Thomas, guys like Ryan, who runs the KOS with me. You know, we all found this outlet for our Evil Dead in a healthy environment where we could connect with other builders who make really great stuff. Met some really great collectors, guys like Ray McIver, who of course has uncovered the lost Evil Dead 2 props and found them in a store randomly where he lives. Like all these great things came about and they all happened in the KOS purely because I wanted all my prop makers in one place because it was more convenient. Like that's how the KOS started. It was all about a non-toxic place for builders to share their ideas and get better. And I think we all got better, you know? I think every one of us elevated our prop game through the projects we did in the KOS. And I know the community is a better place for it. And it's just been so satisfying to know that these quality props are out there now and everybody's Evil Dead collection is that much better. And when I think back to what it was like to try to collect it before, it almost feels like the dark ages. It's just like it's so much better now. And now with the advent of 3D printing and everything, it's just sky's the limit on what you can have. So not everybody can afford screen use props like you, my man, you know.
No, no, but what I think is that I mean, what I found cool on your group, I mean, is that every one of you has a specific address. I mean, there is the one that make book, the one that makes chainsaw, the one that makes power gloves, because even the power gloves are really cool. The one you posted,
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm pretty sure what I'm going to say, but your props are really, I mean, the wall community props are really close, or even sometimes even better than the original. You know, there are a lot of of different props in a movie. The most used, the stance one. I mean,
Mhm.
and they are very different. I mean, I've seen the Tree Fairy. I don't remember Make Eye, right? Right. I've
Make
seen
me
the
a
Tree
yeah,
Fairy.
Gavin's.
Yes,
Make yep.
yes, Gavin. I've seen them. I mean, I have a Tri Fairy from the TV series. I
Yep.
had a I had a very fun study with Jasper Marsh. I don't know if you
We're going to
remind
talk
him.
about him.
Yes, yeah. And he owned a tree fairy, a real tree fairy,
Yep.
and we tried to match the sizes of my tree fairy, that it was the stunt tree fairy from the stunt of
Brittany's costume.
Ariel Carvillo, and
Mhm.
the one from the show, it was 1.5x bigger
Yes.
than the original, and
And
it is
double-sided.
yes, yes.
Yep.
So it was pretty fun. I mean, and when I see yours, they are very close to the original, no?
Yeah,
And
well,
so I
you
think
helped
that
with that. You provided us a lot of reference that we were able to use to finish the rings. We were able to use to finish the Trifari. Uh, I have a replica of Dalton's wristband, thanks to the photos that you had posted of it. Kurt was able to gift me a nice one of those made in leather. So, you know, we got a lot of help. And like I said, Gavin actually got a hold of an actual Trifari from Rob McLean from Rob from
yeah, yeah, yeah,
bookofthedead.ws.
yeah,
And so he has made an accurate Trifari in correct size and the Evil Ash versus Evil Dead size, and then a double-sided Ash versus Evil Dead one with the exact details of a Trifari. And I have a set of each one of those, and they're phenomenal. You know, considering what we started with, that now we have that level of accuracy, that's brilliant, you know. And nothing against Joey Borg. He makes great props. Anybody who buys something from Joey, I'm sure will be extremely happy. I have some stuff from him as well, but there's always going to be a place in my heart for Gavin. Gavin's my guy, man. We started the Trifari together, so I always endorse his Trifari first and foremost, because we worked on that together for so long. And so I absolutely am blown away that anybody can have a Trifari now and it's accurate. You know, we could never get one. How many years did we try to find one? And like you said, random super collectors like Jesper Morch, who kind of everybody knows Jesper, or at least they've seen his work. They just may not know it's him. Of course, he has a Trifari, but the rest of us don't. So now with 3D printing and stuff, we can get these super accurate ones, and it's awesome. It's so cool.
Yeah, what the magic you did, guys, is that substantially each one of us, Evil Dead fans or collectors or props making in your case, we are like hidden in our caves somewhere
Yeah.
in the world, and you bring them up in the same place. It's something, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something really cool. The other thing, the other cool thing is, like you said, is a cool community. There is not too much. Um, it's not a toxic environment. I mean, it's a very good community. The KOS. There was not. I mean, there is not so many problems, right?
No,
I
because
mean,
I kick out everybody who is a problem.
yes, yeah. Well, it works. It works. I mean, it works very well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very safe place for
Well, that's kind
you
of the
to spread.
point. Yeah. The point is, my rule with the KOS is really simple. Say something nice, say something supportive, or say nothing. I don't want to hear your criticism. You're not an expert in the field. I don't care if you don't like it. Go somewhere else and talk about it if you don't like it. My group is for supporting Evil Dead, and that's it. I don't care what you don't like, and I don't want to talk about what you don't like. That's not what this is about. If somebody posts something and you don't like it, say nothing and keep scrolling and move past it. Don't bash somebody. My one exception to that rule is if you say the magic words, "What do you guys think of this?" Then that is free reign for you to be honest. So if you don't want people to say mean things about your stuff, don't ask for feedback. Otherwise, don't volunteer negative things to people in my group. That's the thing. And for the most part, people stick with that rule. But every time somebody gets thrown out, they get pissy about it. They're like, "Well, why can't I say what I want?" Because you're being an idiot and I don't want to hear it. That's why. Because I just said don't say stuff that's mean or don't say stuff that's negative. There are 500 other Evil Dead groups where you can go be a toxic. That's not my group. And if you don't like it, leave. I'll be fine without you. I'm not looking to get a million followers. We got like 1,500 people. That's plenty. I don't want it. And I don't want to exist online with that.
It really makes sense.
The toxic people have driven all the good people out of every group so that all that's left are toxics. Like, I used to equate it to like growing up in a good neighborhood and then a couple of like criminal element move in, and then some of the people who were nice there start to move away, and now all that's left are drug dealers and criminals, and everybody says, "Oh, if you're coming to my town, drive around that neighborhood, don't go through that neighborhood, it's a bad neighborhood." That's what online social media has become. People who like things don't comment online anymore. They watch it, they like it, and then they go on and live their lives. They don't feel the need to share on social media anymore because they're so afraid of the toxic people who just attack them for liking something. So they don't
Yeah.
bother. So you don't hear from the massive amount of people who like stuff. You only hear from the very small but extremely vocal minority of haters. And the whole point of the KOS was to be the one place where people who like stuff can go and share that they like it and not be attacked for it. That was really what that community is supposed to be and was always supposed to be.
It is really cool. I am going to have a little pause because I would like to show you all the comments that are arriving. We
Oh,
have we
comments.
have Rufus. Can you see them? We have
Rufus.
We
I
have
just
Rufus
found out
here.
Rufus lives like 2 hours from me in America, believe it or not. I have to get together with him because I had no idea he lived so close to me. So,
We have here Peyton. Hello,
Peyton,
Peyton.
we're going to talk about him. We got some stuff from him. We got a
we have uh,
debut from him.
we have Chris. I don't
Chris,
know.
phenomenal collector. He's got a beautiful collection.
We have Paul that cannot join with us, but is going to watch the live later. We have Michael. Michael is the guy that run the Army of Darkness and Evil Dead comics. Is
Oh, no kidding.
Then we have Ryan that is sorry to cannot join, but it's my
Yep.
fault, as I said.
Ryan's engaged in social responsibilities right now. It's okay, Ryan. Go be with real people in the real world. Leave the digital to us hermits.
We have Paris that was asking that we are what we are talking about here. We are talking about Necronomicons, Paris,
Hey, Paris. You haven't missed any of the good stuff, Paris. I haven't shown anything yet.
and we have Janelle too.
Oh, Janelle. Hey, Janelle. Yeah, Janelle's in and out of the group back and forth for a long time, so she's always been on and about since the old days, since the pre 500 member days. So everybody in the group knows who Janelle is. So
And Andrew Smith at the end. In
Andrew
the end,
Smith. Andrew Smith's another guy. I follow him on Instagram. He puts up a lot of really cool Evil Dead stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's cool.
absolutely.
Like I know most of these people because from the community, I don't engage and talk to everybody, but I do follow and see what they do. So I recognize a lot of these names and faces. They're very active in the community, which I like because in the beginning it was me, Brett, and Kurt driving all the posts, and then Ryan started driving posts, and now the community kind of runs itself, and I don't have to post as much as I used to, which is great because I have all these books to make, so I tend to just hide in my basement, make books.
So, without any further ado, let's talk about this book. I mean, this book there are a huge number of versions, no? And
Yeah.
when you start knowing the franchise, you get a little bit confused because any movie has its own book. Even if they are a little bit similar, they are completely different at the end.
Hmm.
And I suppose not just the cover, but even the content. Sometimes the content, there is a lot of work from Tom Sullivan. I
Yep.
mean,
Similar but never the same.
similar but never the same. The first two books are from Tom Sullivan. The third one is not because I don't know if you have seen the invaluable documentary. It was a
I
very
have.
sad story. Yes.
So there are two sides to that story. The art director of Army of Darkness tells a very different story. And I was very lucky to have a conversation with him and be given some official artwork that has never before been seen from Army of Darkness, which I did share with the group. Turns out that Tom Sullivan's artwork was in the book because they did have the rights to it. He just didn't make it. They used his sketches to make the pages that actually are in the Necronomicon. We only see the one double-sided page in the intro in the movie, and then there's a deleted scene where you can kind of see a spell on a page in the cave in the original ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then recently, Sam Raimi lent his book out to a con, and a little flip through was filmed. And for the first time ever, we got to see pages, which I have replicated, of course. And I have a longer version of that video with even more pages that I'm still working on when I have time. But Sullivan's artwork, in some way, shape, or form, appears in every book with the exception of 2013 and Evil Dead Rise. To my knowledge, I haven't seen the entirety of both of those books, but not on screen. But Sullivan's work appears in some way, shape, or form, even in the show, which I will show you in a minute. So Sullivan has been the common thread throughout all of the Necronomicons. And so a lot of people feel that if you don't have Sullivan artwork on some level, it's not a real Necronomicon. I'm not as biased as that. I will show you that I do have a 2013 in my collection, which is a recent acquisition, which I get to debut for you tonight because the sculptor has not yet shared a finished version of that. So
Oh,
this will
cool.
debut that particular sculpt, which will be available to the public. So I'm happy that I get to share that tonight as like an official release onto the world. So that's
That's
cool. But
great.
yeah, the content varies from every single one, but they all stem from the same original sketches that Tom worked on. So, do you want to start from the beginning and we can just go through all the books?
What do you prefer? I mean, we have two different way to talk about this. We can talk about the way in which you developed them. I mean, the first you
Absolutely.
developed it and then the latest one,
Sure.
or in order of movie. As what is
So,
your preference
I'll tell you
on
how I
this?
got into it. So, obviously, I wanted to make a book. I was going to make a costume. I wanted to be Ash. I found Brett to work on the chainsaw, and I wanted a book. So the first thing I needed to do was go online and find a cover. Like most people back in that time, about 5 years ago, the only guy who made covers that sold any was David Perkle, also known as Percolations. And Percolations, let's see, here's a cover from Percolations. This is Percolations Army of Darkness cover. Now, this particular one was a gift for my birthday from David, and I like this particular version because there's no N on the head. In my mind, the Necronomicon is not written in English, so why would they have, an English letter N? That made no sense to me. So I kind of wanted one that didn't have it, and for a long time, this was my AOD, and I really liked my AOD. But he didn't have this available at the time, so I picked up a random one that looked kind of like Ash versus Evil Dead, and it wasn't accurate, but I didn't care. And then I went online and found a gentleman by the name of Juan who ran a little site called Elder Props, and he gave
Mhm.
away a bunch of the redrawn pages from the DVDs as a compendium for free, and it also included a couple of Jesper Morch's pages. Um, and so, like most people, I downloaded that free file, but because I was a graphic designer, I went in, made them red, added some coloring and some different things, printed them out, and made a compendium, which is what everybody does for their first Necronomicon.
Yeah.
They say, hey, I'm going to do something no one's ever done. I'm going to make a Necro with all the pages and make it like one big book. Everybody has that idea first, even me. And I liked that book at the time. It was a lot of fun. It was not accurate, and I would never make another one like that again if you paid me. But at the time, that was my first book. After you make one, that's the problem because now it's okay, what would I do different? So that's when I went in to my DVD for Evil Dead 1 and did the flip through, that extra deleted scene where we see every single page except one in Evil Dead 1. And I see that the writing doesn't match the DVDs. The bull script is in the DVDs, which is just English stylized. And Tom's writing in the movie is something completely different. So now I'm not happy because I see the writing is different. I also see that the artwork is different. So I get the order from Evil Dead 1. Then I remembered in Army of Darkness, they did the animatic sequence in the beginning, and we see a bunch of pages there. So I get my DVD and I'm pausing and I'm going through the red pages from Army of Darkness and Evil Dead 2. Pages look similar, but they're not. There's differences, and they're in a different order. So I write down that order page by page. So now I'm sitting here with two different page orders, and I don't know which one to build. And I was kind of at a loss about which way I wanted to do it. Tom had released a bunch of his Evil Dead 1 artwork replicated through his website, and those files were out there that people could find and get. So, based on what I could get my hands on, my plan was to always do an Evil Dead 1, but I didn't have a cover. And so that was kind of why I never did an Evil Dead 1. I didn't like any of the covers that were out there. And then a great thing happened. Ash vs. Evil Dead ended, and VIP fan auctions was going to sell all the props. And we got pictures galore of the pages and the artwork of Aved. And that's when I said, you know what? That's a lot of content. It doesn't matter. I could put Evil Dead 1, Evil Dead 2, and that all in one book. I'm going to make an Aved book. I got in touch with a sculptor, a friend of mine from Australia, CB Studios, Kurt, and he was already like, yep, with these photos, we can make a super accurate cover. Let's do it. I had about 32 pages that I was able to recreate, and I thought that was a good starting point. Then one of the members of the group won one of the auctions for a bunch of the pages. So then I went from 30 to about 60, and I got scans of those, and I was able to rework them and make them match because the artwork doesn't match. And I was able to create new pages, and the next thing I knew, I was able to basically buff out about 100 images to put into the Aved book. So in 2019, I put out the first and only full Ash versus Evil Dead Necronomicon replica, which is this. And so this is Kurt's cover, and it's a beautiful sculpt. It has all the details that this cover is supposed to have. It has the correct number. I'm over here. Sorry. As the correct number of stitches across the entire piece. So we counted the number of holes in the blank to figure out how many stitches they're actually supposed to be. So our book has the exact amount of stitches it's supposed to have. The alignment of the eyes, nose, and mouth placement is the same, but there's a few details that are a little different because we didn't want anybody to try to pass it off as like a screen used and trick people. And then the artwork is it's grown over the years, but basically the artwork, as you can see, that's a Sullivan page. That's a page that everybody knows. This is a page that is common in all the Necronomicons. This one over here, this is not in Ash vs. the Evil Dead, but it's in Army of Darkness. So I reworked it into an Ash vs. Evil Dead styled page and inserted it. So that would be an example of one of the originals that I did. And that's how I know people steal my artwork because I made this page. This page doesn't exist. So when I see it in other books, I know it's mine. This is an example of pages you may not have seen. These appear in most of the other Necronomicons, but it's Sullivan artwork remade, probably by Nick or the other gentleman. His name escapes me. His name's like
Um,
Tigerlin
yes,
on Instagram.
Link Choi, Link Choi.
Link
Yes,
Choi, yeah. This was
it's called.
probably remade by Link Choi, so he probably redid all the Sullivan artwork.
Yeah, yeah,
And
probably,
so
yeah.
there's a lot of that in here. You'll recognize these pages right
Oh,
away.
yeah,
These were all
absolutely.
released in like promo kits for the show and things like that. And we were able to sort of like Alfonso, who's in the group, was really instrumental in helping me get a bunch of these. Christian Peterson helped me get a bunch of these. And some pages didn't exist. I just hand painted them. And then when I got a hold of Screen Used, I swapped them out. So the book has evolved over the years. But in 2019, I put out this book and I've been making about 4 to 6 a year for people ever since. And every year I put up a pre-sale and I'm like, all right, who wants books? And they're gone in 4 minutes. Like I barely have time to hit post before everybody is like, I need one, I need one, I need one. And these people wait a year for me to finish this stuff. Like sometimes some people are waiting more than a year now because of how many friggin' books I decided to do. That was a big mistake. But it's amazing to me how passionate people are for these Necronomicon props. And I'll do them forever pretty much because people want it so bad. They're literally going to sit for a year and wait for their prop. I mean, in a world where nobody has an attention span, can you imagine waiting a year for something and then
Oh my God, yeah,
getting it?
yeah.
Like, but they do it, man. And for the most part, like I said, I've built a bunch of these. I get little to no complaints from anybody about it. They just sit patiently and wait. That's really impressive, because I don't know that I would have the patience for something for a year. I ordered a Vader helmet for like 3 months ago, and I'm like, "Where's my Vader helmet?" But they're really patient about it. So that was the first book, and everybody loved it. And I love this book so much. This is my
It's
favorite.
great.
Oh, I love what Nick and that team put together with this book. I figured out some of their tricks. Um, like for example, a lot of the text pages I own actually a gift from Vinny. I own one of the screen use text pages. The block of text is just mirror imaged on the other page. So they did some of those little quick tricks to block out and fill the book with excess. So I figured out a little bit of what they did to make filler pages. And so I used that to help create 100 unique pages to kind of fill the book out. So is it exactly like what we see on screen? No, it's an idealized version so that if you hold this book in your hand, it would be like what the real Necronomicon was if it existed. But every page that appears on a right side is on a right side, and every page that's on a left side is on a left side. And if two pages appear next to each other, they're next to each other. So that's how I put the book together. And to my knowledge, a couple people make the cover. Nobody makes a full AVED book with exclusively AVED pages. So
Yeah,
that was kind of like what got me known as the Necro guy, I guess.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, the cover, you don't make the cover, right?
No, Kurt from CB Studios
But
sculpted that cover.
after you have a sculpt, you replicate it to have the other books. So how it works, technically speaking.
All the covers get made in Australia and
Okay,
they
and
get
then ship it.
shipped to me. So
Okay, okay.
once or twice a year, I hit Kurt up and I'm like, I need covers. And he sends me a bunch of covers out of his mold in Australia. So I am always collaborating and sharing with the sculptors. And that works really well for me. I paint all of them and I assemble all of them, which, is not as fun. But I know how to make a book. I do know I did work in a print shop, so I understand how to bind. One thing that drove me crazy about Evil Dead is if you watch Evil Dead 1, that book is falling apart in the movie. You can see it's separated from the spine. Tom did what's known as an accordion bind, or what I call strip binding. I hate that binding. It's so flimsy. And so when I build a book, I want to do it in a way that it has sustainability. When I did my first few AVEDs, I weathered the crap out of those books. I was ripping the spine and making them look thousands of years old. And the joke was when I started asking people for feedback, they wanted less weathering. They wanted to appreciate the artwork that like Nick and his team had done. They said that's good enough. So now when you look at a book that I do versus like the first two I did, like Brett's book, which appears in his series RIP, those pages look incredibly beat to crap compared to what I'm doing now because people want to appreciate and see the artwork and not have it covered with a ton of gunk. So I've evolved how I make the books in maybe not the exact way that you see on the show, but they're meant to endure. They're meant to have uh what's the word I'm looking for? Durability. They're meant to
Yeah.
hang in there a little bit. So I did have to change how they made it. That is most notably apparent in how I made the Evil Dead 1 book, which we'll get to. But I have to say that the AVED book is my favorite because it's the most unique book that we do in the sense that nobody else does it. Um, and I like it. I really do. Somebody named Freya
Yes.
says, I like it more clean. That's what I
Yeah.
keep hearing. Everybody likes to appreciate the artwork. And I'm fine with that. I'll do a little more subtle weathering for that stuff. But I round the edges just like it is in the book. And like I said, I make sure that if you hold that book, you feel like you're holding the one in the show. This doesn't feel like a fan made prop. It has the same level of sheen that the latex in the show did to look like leather. The paint job has a feel like leather. There's genuine stitches in there that are weathered and aged. And so I spend a lot of time making sure that when you hold that, if you showed some random person who's not super into Evil Dead, they might say, is that from the show? You're like, no, it's a prop. It's a replica. I I want it to be like that, and I think I've managed to achieve that. At least nobody's complained so far. I
And
have
yeah,
had a few break on me, and I've had to repair them though.
and I have
Um,
uh, another question
yeah.
about the page thickness because once upon a time when I was in Chicago the first time, not in 2019 when I met Brett and the other guys, but in
Hmm.
the 2015,
Okay.
and I finally met Tom Sullivan. He's a very
Oh.
nice guy, and he showed me one of his replica, and I hold it
Okay.
in my hand. I have even a video. Maybe I'm going to show it later.
Sure.
And these pages are really thick. I mean, they are not
Hmm.
thin. They are
Yep.
really thick. So my question is, in your books, what is the level of thickness of the pages?
Depends on the book. So Ash versus Evil Dead, and I'm going to use English units because that's the weights and things we use in the print centers that I was working in. Your average printer paper is what we call 20-pound, 94 brightness white. It's crap and it falls apart. A slightly better printer paper is 24-pound bright white, which is usually a 96. That's like your what you do color prints on and what you do presentations on. 28-pound is considered the brightest paper you can do, but it's still paper. Once you get above 28, now you're in the realm of approaching cardstock. 65-pound cardstock is your thin, flimsy cardstock. 110-pound cardstock is your heavy cardstock. That's about as thick as you can get before you run into trouble putting it through most printers.
Yeah,
Tom Sullivan, for his first book, which was the 81, his pages are on 110-pound cardstock. It's essentially a business card the size of a piece of paper. It's really heavy. I mean, listen to that.
yeah, yeah. I can hear.
It's heavy. It's very heavy paper. So if you're doing an ED1, you're going to do I use 67-pound cardstock in America. They've, for some reason, gone from 65 to 67, which is really just how much pulp is in the paper. So I use 67 so you can still actually turn the pages, but it maintains that thickness that Tom had. But if you want to do an exact replica of Tom's, like Jesper Morch likes to do, the very as real as you can get, you need to use 110-pound cardstock, and it needs to be. It's technically a ivory cardstock, but because of what Tom did to it and what his scanner made it look like, a lot of people have misconstrued that it's actually yellow. It's not yellow. The page wasn't yellow. It's ivory, but it was from 1984, so it changed over time, you know. So you can get something that people do. If we can open up this guy, looks more like this color. People are like, "Oh, it's like this."
Yeah.
It's not actually this color. It's ivory. And so 110 pounds is what you use for an ED1. If you use an ED2, I use 32-pound paper. So it's halfway between cardstock and it's halfway between paper. And the reason I like 32 is it takes weathering very nicely, especially with a laser print, and it really gives you a nice sound when you turn the page.
Yeah,
You like
yeah,
that nice turn.
yeah,
I
yeah,
used to use 65 for everything. If you look at Brett's book is on 65-pound cardstock. He loves how thick and chunky those pages are, but it puts a real strain on the spine and the binding with that much weight. And so I found that 32 is better for the AVED and for the ED2. It works better. So where's my ED2 here? So if you look at
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
it's
can
it's
see.
got that little bit of nice flip, but you also have to remember a 32-pound paper, once you gunk it up with all the weathering and stuff, gets thicker.
Yeah,
ED1 doesn't have a ton of weathering on it, so you want to use a thicker page since you're not compensating with a lot of weathering. But when you do an ED2 the way Ryan insists it had to be done, and Ryan is my go-to man, he is the guy who knows Evil Dead better than me. And anytime I need something verified for how good it is, I check with Ryan. And Ryan says, you got to go harder. You got to make it dirtier. So we really beat the crap out of these pages, and they are dirty, man. So the ED2 books, which were supposed to be the animatic and nice and clean and easy for me to do, I now have to hand paint and weather every page, which is why it's taking me so long. But when it's done, you get a beautiful, beautiful ED2 book that just knocks your socks off. So 32 pounds is my preference. If anyone was going to make their own book, I recommend 32-pound paper. It's what I'll be using in my Army of Darkness book. Um, so if I show you the Army of Darkness pages in the like I said, we did get to see the inside of Army of Darkness. So I immediately had to create these pages. So as you can see, Sullivan's artwork is used, and what that writing is, um, Tony Tremblay did a
hmm,
page of text. And that page of text is the template that was used in all of the AOD books, whether it was the animatic book from Disney that did the flying
yeah,
biting ash, that was actually done by Disney. I actually got to talk to a guy on the Disney team who worked on that book, and he sent me some cool photos, so I can confirm they did use Tony's text in that book. And all other versions of the Necronomicon that got used on screen used that text page as a base. And then Tom's work was cut out, blown up, or shrunk and Xeroxed, and they sort of makeshifted a bunch of pages because the original book was stolen. You know that story on Army of Darkness.
yeah,
They
yeah,
did a
yeah, yeah,
full book, and that was one that Tom helped work on. That book disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to it. Different staff have told me different stories, but officially nobody knows what happened to it or who stole it. And then they had to make a new one, and they wanted it bigger because they knew that Bruce had to go in the book. And that's when it was completely redesigned. They took what they had, which were a bunch of Xeroxes in black and white of Tom's ED2 set, which you do see in the Invaluable um,
yeah,
documentary. That's what he restuffed back into his screen used cover in the wrong order, and some are upside down, to say that that's the screen used book, even though we clearly know it's not because the page order is wrong and they're in black and white and they're upside down. But they had those laying around and they had the rights to that. They had purchased that, which was the big conflict between Tom and Sam about that ownership. And they used that to make the AOD book that we now see in Sam's possession. Sam actually was so pissed over his ordeal with Tom, he gave his personal ED2 book away. That is the book that we see in Jason Goes to Hell that was given to that director That is Sam's personal copy of the ED2 Necronomicon. He gave it away because he didn't want it anymore. He was just so over it. And the only Necronomicon in Sam Raimi's possession is actually the AOD book. So that kind of says a lot about where Sam ended up with that franchise. That the only book in his possession is the AOD, and that's another thing that kind of makes me love the AOD book because that's the only one that Sam has. So it's I was super happy with when those pages came out, and I was able to work a little bit with it and make a good replica. But yeah, paper is super huge. Another thing that people ask me is what type, not only the weight, but what type of paper do you use? Now, when I put this up here, you can see this is just straight up ivory paper. This is 65-pound ivory cardstock. This is what I use for an ED1 book. It's just a plain sheet of ivory. When I do any other book, I use what is known as a parchment ivory paper. Parchment has an irregular pattern on it. It
Okay.
doesn't have one straight color. The reason I like to do that is not all parchment paper comes out the same way when they press it. So when you put the ink, or in this case, in my case, the toner over that, you get just a little bit of variance in the color and the text and whatnot every time, so that no two prints are ever the same. And it just gives it that little bit more of aged paper character. So I recommend 32-pound Southwest parchment paper for any Necronomicon other than an ED1. I think it's a great paper to use. It's particularly very good to use with laser prints. So I only do laser printing. I own a laser printer. I do not do inkjet. Inkjet does not weather well because it's wet ink. If you get it wet, the ink will bleed and separate
Yeah.
into multiple colors. Do not do inkjet if you can avoid it. It's worth the $20, even if you do it in black and white, to go to Staples and just have them run it off on a laser machine, or buy your own like me. But I recommend Southwest parchment ivory 32-pound paper for almost every Necronomicon you do. If you're gonna do 81 and you have one of Brett's covers, one of Peyton's covers, absolutely use 110-pound ivory cardstock. And if you really, really, really want to make yourself a 2013, then I would recommend using. I still say use parchment paper, but if you want to be as accurate to that show as possible, you gotta buy 28-pound or 32-pound white paper and do the coffee bath, which nobody likes to do.
Just because we have talked about it, I'm going to show you the video I was talking about.
Yeah, man, fire it up.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to share it.
I gotta shave.
Okay, here it is. Can you see it? Can you
I
see
can
it?
see it.
Okay, I'm going to play it.
Oh, that's Tom's replica cover. Looks like
Yes,
Gen 1.
it's Tom himself helping me to keep the book open.
Yep. You notice how all the strips are on the left side of the page until he gets to the page where we see the shoreline. Then all the strips are going to switch to the right side. That's the
Okay.
accordion binding. So that cover right there, Tom resculpted specifically for his replicas that he was doing. He made a brand new ED1 cover because there is no mold for the ED1. Anybody who
Yeah.
says they have a straight from the mold ED1 is lying, because the ED1 cover is Scotty's prosthetic. They did Scotty's prosthetic mold and used latex soaked paper to create a cover for ED1. There is no mold. The first Necronomicon to have a mold is actually the ED2. And that mold is interesting because that mold was created with a 90-degree angle in it for the spine, which is super weird. So that cover is actually what Jesper recreated with his cover, which is the book featured in bookofthedead.ws's documentary style page of how to make a Necronomicon. That's Jesper Morch. Jesper Morch is the guy who made the famous Book of the Dead.ws cover and was the only guy on the RPF. That's one of Tom's. That's a real one. That looks like, if I had to guess, that was not the silicone one. That looks latex. Is that latex?
This is Jasper too.
That's Jesper's cover.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, did he paint that for you?
Yes, yes,
Wow, that's how good Jesper is. I couldn't distinguish that from Tom's. He
yes.
absolutely nailed Tom's coloring on that. I am
Yeah,
in
yeah.
awe of that guy, dude.
The Tom one is when I got this one,
Mhm.
the thing is the Tom one is a little bit smaller, so it's
Mhm.
like that. Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's
Jesper
smaller.
made his in the proportions that Tom's replica is, but I shrunk this down to correct size. Jesper's my hero, man. That guy, I would never have gotten into necromaking if he wasn't so accessible. When I reached out to him when I first started making a book, he helped me with everything that I did in terms of making a book, and he was kind enough to get me a pull of his cover so that I could have one in my collection. And I got to tell you, man, it means the world to me to have one of his covers. I would not be doing Necros without Jesper. To this day, I say that he is still the best bookmaker to ever make a Necronomicon because his book looks so much like Tom's, like his replica. And even from what you just showed me, that paint job, I couldn't tell that that wasn't one of the ones that Tom sold. I should have because it's actually better looking. But good lord, he is just so talented. Like I mean, just some people have been kind and said I was the best at baking books. Jesper's the best, and I will say that till the day I die. I love that guy, man. He's such a
I,
good bookmaker.
I can confirm because touching the Thomas Sullivan book, touching the some the Jasper book, you have the same even on the page's thickness. Is this the reason for
Yeah,
which I asked?
and
Because this
Jesper hand sands all those pages
can you say I don't
with
know
a
if
sanding block. Oh yeah, hey, I'll pull mine. Let's you show me mine. I'll show you. Oh, there we go. Let's see. So let's go to page one. So Jesper. Now this is Tom's actual artwork. Let's
okay
Jesper makes his by hand.
yeah
Show yours and I'm going to show mine. Look at how amazingly close
yeah
Jesper's is,
wait I'm going
and
to
mine's digitally recreated. And I've got the vellum in there, which I'm supposed to have, but look at
yeah
how amazingly close Jesper's is to the actual thing.
yeah
It's
mine
unbelievable.
mine is printed because
Mhm.
I mean Jasper printed for me and then
Yeah.
weathered it.
Yep. He handmade a whole set himself, prints them, sands it like the dude. Everything I know about making a book, I learned from him. He's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
guru.
it's really cool. It's really
It's
cool.
unbelievable. Dude, that's a huge piece in your collection having a full book made by him. That's amazing. It's
Yeah, yeah,
awesome.
for
I'm
sure.
just thrilled I have his cover and I painted this myself. So as you can see, I do not I tried to get it looking very much like the
The
ED1
movie,
looks,
the movie.
but when I see the way that Jesper made yours like the replica, it makes me wish I maybe go back and redo it, but oh, gorgeous piece, man. Cheers.
However, I have
Gorgeous.
a nice story because
Yeah?
when I got into Evil Dead collecting, um, Tom still accepted order for its replica, and there was 9 in the queue, and then he stopped to produce them. So
Mhm.
I was a little bit unlucky, probably some months before, probably, and I
Mhm.
got mine. If I'm not wrong, it doesn't work alone. It didn't work alone. It worked with the Steve Patrick Rees, maybe the bookbinder. I
Yeah,
don't
he
know.
had a so what he did was he sent his pages out to be printed and bound, and then that bound set of pages with the fabric flap, which is not part of the Evil Dead 1 book, is sent back to him, which he then pastes into the book because he was pulling covers out and finishing the actual book, but all the page work was done by another person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Patrick Rees, if I'm not wrong, or something
I
like
don't
that.
remember. But I had some pictures of how he did his binding process from that binder, and that's when I decided I wasn't going to make them like that because I was like, I don't think so. Um, I did
And,
something a little more traditional.
given the fact you were talking about press kit,
Hmm.
I, this
You
one
got
could be
one.
yes, this one could be pretty helpful. I'm going to I have okay. I don't want to risk
Yeah,
to
you
ruin
got to pull the little tabby, right? Yeah. So those pages I just recently showed, that's where I found those. Somebody got a hold of one and sent me some high
so
resolution
scans.
pictures of that. Yeah, so I can recreate them. So yeah, that was I get what's really cool, like I said, going back to the KOS. when people saw I was making the book, people were hitting me up and sending me extra pages. Like I wasn't even asking for them anymore. People were just saying, "Hey, do you have this page? You can have this page," and that was just so nice because that benefited everybody who got a book, you know. And so it was really cool to see people reaching out to me. And like I said, guys like Alfonso and Christian Peters and Vinny, a lot of people were very, very helpful in contributing to make sure that that book, as many pages as possible, were in it. And yeah, man, the press kit was that was one of the last ones that had stuff, and I couldn't believe it. I thought I was done with that file, and then somebody sent me that, and I was like, ah, man, that's like 8 more pages I got to put in now. But I was happy because that was the first time I'd really seen a lot of Sullivan pages, so I was like, all right. And then Nick Bassett on his Instagram just recently shared a new page that I had never seen before, and now I'm like, oh, I got to update it again. So that's why I said, I was like, when he comes on the show, get all the pages. I need them all. So yeah, so for the Evil Dead 1, Jesper's cover was the ungettable get. The only like 4 people have that this cover. You've got one, Rob McLean has 2. Um
On
I
board
want
now.
to say one other guy has one that I know of. I can't remember his name. But not a lot of people had Jesper's cover because Tom went after us. You know, he'd send cease and desist. Like, hey, don't sell my covers. That's mine. Don't do that. Fair enough. I got a cease and desist from Tom Sullivan. He said, don't do that. So that's why I did the AVED book because he was busting my balls about the ED2 stuff. So I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
do it until he lost his rights. And then I was like, well, if Studio Canal wants to sue me, they can. But when I did get this cover, this is actually a fairly new cover for ED1. This is the Burn book by
yeah,
Peyton Patrone. This is what the book looks like when it's thrown in the fire. That was a different sculpt than what was the normal book we see in the movie. And I had found Peyton on YouTube when he was like 13. He had done an ED1 cover in latex. It looked really good. And I remember I commented on that YouTube video. I was like, dude, please send me one. I need that cover. Because I had never found anybody who had done a good ED1 and Jesper wasn't selling his. So I wanted an ED1. And I was like, please, please make this cover. He never responded to me or whatever. And I was like, and then a bunch of years later, I find him on Instagram. He joins the KOS, and I'm like, "You're the 13-year-old kid who made the Evil Dead 1 book." He's like, "Yeah, I made another one." And I'm like, "Well, give it to me." So he sent me this, and I made the Burn book. And
the
he
tongue. You missed the tongue, right?
just, what's that?
You missed the tongue from the mouth of the book.
Yeah, right. Because if you notice, a couple people, I think Jack Malone over in England made one, and then he actually has eyeballs and a tongue that you can put in this and make that version of it.
Yeah,
So I wanted the Burn book, and I was like, well, now I've got an ED1 book. Then Jesper randomly hit me up and he was like, hey, man, I'm thinking of doing a couple of pulls. Do you want one? And I was like, yeah. So then I was super happy because I had both of these and I thought, this is it. I've got my ultimate ED1 collection. Well, then Brett Groovy Chainsaw said, hold my beer, and produced the most perfect
yeah,
Evil Dead 1 cover ever made. This thing is gorgeous. And
yeah,
we spent me and Ryan spent so much time online nuancing and breaking down this cover to get it just the way I like it. And because this is the book that I knew the best out of all the Necronomicon. So I was very particular about how this needed to look. And Brett just did a phenomenal job. And this is, in my opinion, the most accurate cover
yeah.
replica ever made of any Necronomicon,
Screen
fan made.
accurate. Yes, yeah, yeah.
It's so
Absolutely.
good. And of course, I had spent years working on an ED1 file that is my own. This is not something that you will download. This is not directly from Tom's scans and just simply cropped and put in a book. I went back and digitally altered and changed all the coloring on these pages so that they will print and look as exact as possible. And if you even go in, I showed you when you were flipping through Tom's, the strips. Now, my book is
Yeah,
bound correctly like a real book, but I have still gone in and artificially put these strips in because they do appear there. They don't do anything in my book, but they're there. And the one thing that I did differently than Tom is this page. It
yeah.
has the hand, right?
This one, right? I have a problem with this because there is latex on this.
Ah,
The
exactly. So what happens with latex when you smash it into latex? It
yes, it's a
sticks.
yeah, bravo, exactly, exactly.
Exactly. So what did I do? I wanted something that would allow me to open and close the book and not stick to itself. So what I did was I traced my own hand on tracing paper, vellum. Yep, you got it. I then took latex paint, white paint, painted my hand, house paint, put it on the paper, and then colored it with a yellow wash. And what I was able to
Hmm.
create was I was able to simulate that look in a sustainable type of
Yeah,
material that won't decay yellow and still has a texture to it. You can hear that. So it still feels, and it's covered in plasti dip, a ton of clear plasti dip. So this thing will never stick to itself. It will never decay. It won't yellow with UV. And I was able to recreate this page as accurate as possible. And you can see the 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 finger even sticks out the top the way it's supposed to. And when Brett did this sculpt, I really got on his ass about this. If you look, I'm going to use my head to block it right here. This little piece right here sticks
yeah,
up. Because as I said, this book was just strips of paper soaked in latex wrapped around Scotty's face. One of the little pieces was coming up on the book. Brett sculpted that into the sculpt. Literally every detail you could ask for is in this book. And so if you have the chance to pick one up, I highly recommend it. It is easily the best cover you can buy from anybody. I know he's not doing them like clockwork, but when he posts them, get one. It's
uh,
phenomenal. My favorite book currently. So these are all your different options that are out there in the world for ED1. Brett's cover, which is the best. Peyton's burn book, which is extremely accurate to that sculpt as well. And if you can get your hands on a Jesper, it is a piece of history. It's part of Evil Dead history, and it's a beautiful, beautiful recreation of Tom's replica book. But the book everybody wants to talk about is always this.
yeah, yeah,
I was speaking with David Bartrug, who is, of course, the source of the lineage cover. David got his hands on several of Tom's pieces, one of which was a pull and a stunt book from production. Okay, so he had an actual stunt book, which was one solid piece of latex. He had contacted me about putting pages into his book, and I flat out told him, I said, I'm not cutting an Evil Dead 2 screen use book. What are you out of your mind? I said, what you need to do is you need to make a mold of that and send me a freaking pull, and I'll put pages in the replica. I am not touching the real thing. I won't do
yeah,
that. So I said, if you want to put some flaps on it for me, these pieces, the fold over pits, I said, if you put some flaps on that bad boy for me, I can make you a new book, but I can't do it without the flaps. So you have to sculpt some flaps for me. So that's how this started. I told him what I needed to make him an Evil Dead 2 book. And then he said, "Well, if I made these available to people, would you be available to put pages in for people?" And I said, "Absolutely. If you want to get people covers, I'm available to turn them into books." And that's how people were able to get lineage covers of Evil Dead 2, thanks to David and his ability to work with me on this. We were able to get a series of animatic based sequence pages into an actual cover molded from a production pull. And we actually spoke to one of Tom's people on Instagram. We confirmed that this is actually what it is. It is a lineage pull. He identified the book that we used to make it, and he told me he was the one who actually pulled it out of the mold himself. So we know for a fact it is lineage. It is accurate to what you see on Evil Dead 2, and it is therefore the most accurate Evil Dead Necronomicon you can own because it is not a fan sculpt. It is an actual sculpt that
scalped,
has
yeah,
lineage to the film. So if you're an Evil Dead fan and you want something lineage, this is second to none because it does have that screen lineage, which is super rare. And of course, when people think of Evil Dead and the Necronomicon, this is the book that everybody thinks of. Evil Dead
yeah,
2 has appeared in 4 different films. It is without a doubt the most famous Necronomicon. So, whereas it's not my favorite book,
the
I
same,
understand why it's everyone else's. This is Ryan's favorite book. He never shuts up about this book. He loves this book. So, I made this the way that Ryan liked. So all the fans seem to like the same things that Ryan likes about Evil Dead 2. So the way that I liked it was not the popular way. So this has been made the way that the fans asked for it to be made. The only difference is I took out the color. So, for example, this page. Let me find it here. It's on, I think it's page 6. Nah, this page here. Um, so we have the text page, and then we have the leaves and mushrooms page. If you watch the animatic in HD, the leaves and mushroom page has greens and blues in it. It's bound in human flesh and inked in blood. That's what he says. Why does it have color then? Like, that always drove me nuts. So I said, if I'm going to do the Evil Dead 2 book, and I'm going to do the red book, as I call it, which is the animatic, I'm not putting color in the damn book.
Yeah,
Like, it's going to be red. And if people don't like it, you can color it yourself. Get your watercolors out and do it. It's fine. I made it red. It's red and it's black and there's yellows in it. And that's all the color that's in it. And that's the way that I do the ED2 book. We call this sullivated artwork. It's artwork that's weathered in a way that feels like Tom's weathering. Because in the movie, we only see these 2 pages. We just see this.
yeah,
So what I did was I used this based on Ryan Brett's feedback as the template for how weathered every other page should be. And so I went in and did that. Because if you look at Tom's collection, he went and weathered those pages after the film. So what you see in his touring collection is not accurate to what was on film. He beat the crap out of those things. He went back and redrew the red ink. He went back and watercolored them. You can see the pages have water damage now. They're soaking wet and dried, and they have that very, very waterlogged look. So what was in his museum was not screen used. He had revisited that a lot, just like his dagger. He had broken and repaired and redone that over and over and over again. So we always use the film or behind the scenes photos, like on bookofthedead.ws, as our visual cues for how to make it accurate. And that's what we try to achieve. So that it right now is definitely the book that I have the most orders out for. Everybody bought one of David's covers. I think almost every one of them asked me to make their book into a book, and I am getting through them as quickly as I can, but I don't want to rush them. I want to make sure they look great. It's a lineage cover. It needs to be taken time and care, and it needs to look perfect.
perfect.
So
Yeah.
I'm taking my time for everyone, and I promise you, when you get it, you will be happy. Ask Ray McIver. You'll be happy.
Without wanting to be in any way blasphemous, and even because that is a factory based, let's say, book. What do you think about the Trick or Treats version of Book of the Dead?
I actually really like the Trick or Treat Studio Necronomicon. When you consider that that's all completely redrawn artwork and that book is only $80 when it came out. I think I
Mm.
paid $85 for mine. That's an incredible deal for something that is not only licensed, but there's really no copyrights or anything in that book. It really does look like a prop, you know? It's not like there's English text printed here and there. Everything's written in that style and everything. So it really does feel like a prop. Now, granted, I think the cover leaves something to be desired, but as I've shown you, a nice paint job can make a crappy cover go a long way. And I think if you are looking to support Evil Dead, buy a licensed prop. Buy the Trick or Treat Studios book. I had one and I was very happy with it. I showed a video on the KOS how you could weather those pages and make that book look 100 times better. Um, and I thought it was a great win for the Evil Dead community to have that and have it be licensed. And I was very
Yeah.
appreciative of Trick or Treat Studios for putting that out. Now, having said that, there were improvements you could make. Tom Sullivan sculpted the original Trick or Treat Studios Evil Dead 2 book. Remember that big giant brick with
Yes,
that blood?
I have this. I have this.
So if you took that and cut that out, you could wrap that around that book and make a very, very nice Evil Dead 2 book. And so I actually showed how to do that, and I recently sold that book. But I was really positive on the Trick or Treat Studios book, and if you have the ability to pick one up as a fan, I highly recommend it. I think it's a great book,
Yeah,
and it's licensed.
I have one. Maybe the worst part was the spine because it was like
Yes. Well, it was very thin cardboard that the book was built out of, and so you had to be a little careful with it. But overall, for what it was, at $80 or $100, it's a very, very reasonable pickup. And the paper that they used is actually the same paper that I use, which means I could add pages into it as I saw fit, which was also nice. But all the edges were torn, they weren't clean, they were irregular. I thought it was done really well. For a mass-produced thing, I was really impressed.
Cool.
Yeah, man. So I did mention that there was some new stuff to debut.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if you're cool, I'd like to show you. First thing
Absolutely.
I want to
I'm
do,
going to put you in first, let's say in first plan, so everyone can see it better. Just a
sure.
moment.
So
Let's.
the first thing I want to show
Okay.
off, the first thing I want to show off on your show, and you can show yours afterwards, but you yourself have a Necronomicon,
Yeah.
and that cover is available on Amazon. It's an Ash versus the Evil Dead cover, and it's about $30. You can get that cover for about $30. With a
Yeah.
proper paint job, you could turn that book into something pretty nice. And if you put a set of my pages in that book, it actually comes out not too bad. So for people who are concerned that, they can't get on my wait list or something like that, you can take even a $30 cover, and if you put enough love into the paint job, you can actually get a really, really nice piece of work out of it. So for people who are concerned, Emmanuel has one of these books, and this is my version of the book that
Yes.
Emmanuel has, and
This
I can
one. This one.
there it
This.
is. That's how it comes, and this is what you could turn it into. And so I want people to, and now granted, I have shrunk this down and made it a little different size to fit the pages that I had, but I want people to understand that there are enough options out there that with a little love and a little paint and a lot of plastic dip, you can make a really, really nice Necronomicon. And Emmanuel, if you ever want that book of yours reworked and painted up, I would be happy to do it for you for free of charge, my friend. So,
Thank you, mate. Thank you, mate.
so what is out in the world and brand new for collectors? The first cover I want to show you guys is from Horror Art, and it comes out of the UK. And you'll be able to find this on pretty much any Evil Dead group, but you can find it in the KOS. I will be sharing the link to the gentleman who makes this. It is the 2013 cover. And so I have not put my pages into the 2013 yet, but this is the brand new fan available 2013 cover. I was very, very appreciative to get a hold of one before he's officially announced it and released it, but they are coming. And this is the version that is based on the one that has what I call the pockmark, the cigarette burn on the cover. I have painted this to the best of my ability and hand stitched it to the best of my ability to make it look as it appears in 2013. And I can promise you guys, where I do believe the size is a little smaller than what it appears in 2013, when you put the pages in this, and you'll have to print them a little smaller than 8.5 by 11, but this will shape up to be a really nice book. I know not everybody is a fan of 2013. I liked 2013 a lot. I thought it was a really good horror movie, and I thought it was a really good way to do Evil Dead serious while still being loyal to what Evil Dead is. And so I really liked that film. And this cover is beautiful. It really looks nice. And even if you put in a micro set of my pages from Aved in the book, it still makes for a really nice book. So you can put whatever pages you want in the 2013 cover. But if you have a chance to pick up, I believe it's horror show art or horror art, but the sculptor's name is Jack. He goes by Jack, and you'll be able to see this on the KOS. I fully endorse this as a 2013 cover. I think it looks great. It has a lot of the details that the 2013 cover needs, including the stress lines and the wrinkles. It's very much um, the detail that we see in the versions that we've seen. Now, there were multiple versions of it. There was more than one version of it. So we saw some on display in California in the studio. We saw some screen used pictures and things like that. So they kind of take pieces of all the different versions, and those details appear in various places. The irregularity of the spine and the stitch work there has been matched. I didn't go through and physically count all of the stitches to see if they match, but it looks really good. So the first book that I have showing you guys that nobody's gotten a hold of yet, but you will be able to get a hold of, is a brand new 2013 to add to your Necronomicon collection. So if you don't have a 2013 and you want a 2013 because you love it, Christopher Hamilton, you now can get yourself a 2013. Keep an eye out for that on the KOS and all the Evil Dead pages. I'm sure you'll see it in no time flat. I will happily comment on the one that I liked, but I fully endorse this. Jack did a great job with this. Thank you, Jack, for sending me one early so that I could complete it, and absolutely knocked it out of the park. Love it to death. That's the first one. The second one is a brand new, fully detailed, fully redone Army of Darkness Necronomicon. This is made by Peyton Patrone. We've seen one by Peyton already. Now, the Peyton Patrone cover that I'm showing you has several details that we have now been able to uncover from two sources. One is the book that was on display out in California,
Mm-hmm.
the one in the studio. We were able to see a couple different versions of the Necronomicon, including what I call the portal page, which is the one that has the hole in it, and one of the stunt books that's just sort of out there. From that, we were able to discern exactly what details needed to be there. And then recently, Sam Raimi's personal copy, which was the Hero book, made the rounds at a con circuit that he was doing. And we got a really nice high res video of it and some high res pictures. I blew one of those pictures up to full size, 10 by 12, and had Peyton go in and sculpt that at this size. What Peyton was able to achieve with this, and what was not achievable before, is this is the first Necronomicon that has all four horns
Yeah.
in latex. So these horns, as you can see, I'm wiggling it with my finger. The horns are included. No other AOD that has been made for fans has ever had the horns. Similarly, the teeth, which are painted different color here, they are also latex and into the sculpt. The other thing is the N is included because it is screen accurate, and I just gave up on hating it. It's there, it needs to be there. But the first time ever, we did get a photo of what the spine looks like on
Ooh.
the AOD. It contains two double-headed serpents and another N. That's something we've never seen, and we were able to discern what that was, and Peyton did a great job recreating that. And he painted this cover for me, but I went in today and did some extra highlights and stuff so it would show up on video a little bit. And I would love to get some high res photos out on the KOS as soon as I can. But this particular book is phenomenal. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous cover, and it's textured. It has a very, very meaty texture to it. So it just looks and feels like rhinoceros skin. It's or elephant skin. It's just thick. It's very different than the other cover I have from Peyton, which is that burn book. It's a completely different texture. It's a completely different feel. His paint job is actually really good. I did very little detail work to it at all. He did send me a blank so I can completely paint one from scratch and see what it would look like if I take it on my own. But I really like the way his paint job came out. I'm pretty happy with this. I will compare this to the percolation cover. So this is David's. And as you can see, the proportions are different. But
Yeah.
I feel that Peyton's cover is an upgraded version. It is a little smaller than the Perkle, which is a 10 by 12. So this is a little bit smaller, but it has that squareness that was necessary. And I think it looks pretty good. Emmanuel, you're the first person other than me to see this in motion. What do you think of it?
It's really good. It's really good. Yes.
And so Peyton Patron, of course, has his own Instagram, and of course he has appeared in all the Evil Dead groups. You'll be able to get this from him. I know that several people have already ordered theirs. They should have gotten them in the mail either today or tomorrow. So hopefully everybody really shows AOD some love and adds this to their collection. So this is like I said, this is a book that I really, 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 really like because it was my first Evil Dead book, and it was the first book that got me into Evil Dead, and I cannot wait to throw those screen accurate pages in. And even something like the 2013, if we wanted to take a look like at 2013 pages, which I do have in this book as well, I show love to 2013 as well. And in the future, there will be love for Evil Dead Rise. That book will also be made.
Yeah.
People have asked me about it. Yes, it'll happen. I don't plan on getting to it until I get all the ED2s done, some of the ED1s done, and all these AVEDs done. And then next year I will tackle ED Rise. But I loved that film. I thought it was great. I thought it was very Evil Dead. I saw it with Ryan and his son, and we had a great time. I saw it with Vinny. Vinny was there as well. His lady came with us too, and it was a great experience. I love to find out that Nick Bassett actually worked on that film. So, does that guy work on every film? Like, does he work on everything?
The guy I interviewed the last time.
Yeah.
He worked on Ash versus Evil Dead. He did 90% of the hero pages,
Yeah.
and
And
then
then,
in Evil Dead Rise, he did half of the page you see.
yeah.
There are something like 25 hero pages in the
Yeah.
Evil Dead Rise movies. Did you see the interview I make to Lee Cronin? Because I have a, if you
Yes, I
want, I
watched
can,
the Lee Cronin interview like 4 times.
yeah, I can share for the audience a little bit in which we talk about the book, and they told something like, "Yeah, I can show you
Yeah, do it.
just a moment. I'm going to find the video because
Yeah,
I think it makes. I would like to have even the one for Link Choi, but I still didn't download the video because I did the
that's
live,
fine.
and
What
but
a lot of people
the
missed was the artwork that was, and I picked up from Lee and from Nick. The artwork that was the sketches from the 2013 Necronomicon. He did
yeah,
work on Ash vs. the Evil Dead and Evil Dead Rise. He's actually
yeah,
done 3 Necronomicons, which is
yeah,
amazing.
Ten
So
Williams,
he's
right?
tied with
Yes.
Tom Sullivan. So that's pretty interesting, huh?
Just a moment. I'm finding the Lee Cronin
That was a great
interview.
interview you did with him, by the way.
He is a very humble guy. He was very kind to permit me to have an interview with him because
Yeah, somebody that talented has no business being that nice.
just a moment, it's arriving. Okay, for being here. I'm going to find the piece in which it talk about the Necronomicon. Just a moment because I don't remember which minute. So I'm going to find it on my PC and then I'm going to play it because on the contrary, it will be
Yeah,
a mess. Uh,
yeah. I'm really happy to be on the show, man, and I really appreciate you having this show. I loved every interview you've done so far. I love that it's dedicated to Evil Dead. I love the fact that you're really getting these people of such amazing content. You know, we're getting some insight into behind the scenes that we won't get anywhere else except at Evil Dead Italia, and it's just been so lovely to hear from the actual artists
yeah.
their perspective, talking with a real Evil Dead fan, which you are. So it's absolutely great, and I'm really, really humbled that you asked me to be on the show. And you know, I ramble on like there's no tomorrow, but I really appreciate it, man. It's an honor to be on, and I just hope you keep getting guests more interesting than me going forward.
No, no, you are very interesting, you guys. Even because the last time we talked about the book, and I
Yeah,
hope that the guys I hosted the last time will see this video because when we were talking, they said something like, "Oh, we would like to be honorary member of Knight of Sumeria," because I talked about your work, guys.
I know, and I heard that, and I was like, I half wanted to call Kurt and be like, dude, bust out the ring molds. Let's send them rings. Let's go. Like, let's make them. Because you'd mentioned Lindsay Ferris. I had sent Lindsay Ferris a message one time because I posted a picture of the ring and I did hashtag Knights of Sumeria. He shared that post. And so my plan was I had always wanted to give Lindsay Ferris a ring. But he doesn't come to Comic Cons out in America too much. I have a ladies' ring for Dana De Lorenzo from Kurt that I keep trying to get to her at a con so I could give her the ring because she's like the unofficial leader of the KOS at the end of the series. So our goal is to try to give rings to these people. So if those guys want to be in the KOS, man, they're in. Done. Official. Welcome to the group. Send me
Okay,
artwork.
I found. I think I found the minute. Okay, 19 minutes. Okay, something like here. It was a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Book of the Dead design is really cool. Is your idea? Is something you talked about with the prop masters, and you come? I mean, how did it come out? The thief on the coaster.
Well, like I'm very specific when I write because I direct also. So I do try and visualize what it is that you're going to see on screen. So the screenplay described the book as you see it on screen. So it talked about the veins, it talked about the teeth, it talked about the way the teeth behave and the blood dropping on the book, and described what the pages were like. The joy of that is you can only write so much in a screenplay, and then you bring a great creative team on. You bring the art department, production designer, the art director, the props master, who was amazing. And then as we work together, they take my ideas and we make it even better again, take it further. And the process of creating the book was about 3 months with a team of people. So like my first day in preparation on the movie, which it was 12 weeks of preparation. My first day, it's like we had a meeting about the book, and we had a meeting about the book every day, all the way up. And then we needed the book on set, maybe day 8 or 10, 9, 10 of shooting. The book was still being worked on, right up till it's brought to camera. And then even when we shot the first day with it, we kind of looked at the footage and thought, we could tweak a little and improve it a little bit and, beat it up a little bit more. But what we would do is, as a process then, was take the ideas that I've written down and then go further, look at references. And it was all handmade. Every single page has been hand aged. Like every single page in the book is unique in that way. And then there was versions of the book. So there's like, I've got the hero book, and there was maybe 3 hero books. The one I have was the kind of most complete, survived the movie best. And then there's a couple of other copies. And then there's like a version that's completely solid that doesn't open. So a character could pick it up, but it won't suddenly flop open or fall. Then there's a special one that's just a piece of the book for the teeth to open, where we had this like lever that you would pull, so you could only film it from a certain angle. So there was probably in total maybe 6 or 7 books to achieve all of the different things that were possible.
So something like a dream for an Evil Dead fan to be there. You see all these books.
It's in my drawer. I'm still waiting to find the right case to put it in. It's sitting in my drawer right now, wrapped in bubble wrap.
So I ask very particular information. I mean, in the movie you see something like 6 pages, maybe 7.
Yeah.
But there are others that was never shown, or the book is some pages and then empty pages.
So it's a little bit of both. There's no empty pages, but what we did is the pages that we see, and I would have filmed a lot more of the book, and then you make your selections. I always had there was key hero images we put more detail into. So the ones that you see in the film had more man hours, more people working on it to actually make it really camera ready. And then we'd have works in progress of other ideas that we never saw through, that we'd finish a little, and we'd put that in as a filler page. And then some of the images are repeated in the book. So it's not like every page is a unique image, but the book is completely finished. There's no empty pages, because we had the scenes where the pages are moving, and that's all practical. It's not digital. That's the book. And it's 2 crew with air blowers off camera fighting each other for supremacy with blasts of air to make the pages keep on going like different directions. That meant the book had to look convincing from page 1 to whatever it is, page, I don't know, 150 or 200 or whatever's in the book. So yeah, it was all detailed, but we did cheat a little by just repeating things or slightly changing them a little bit. But there's probably, if you actually look at the end credits of the movie, there's images from the book for all of the titles that are there for the different, producers and cast and things. And they're pretty much all of the hero images. And there's probably even a few more. So we probably created maybe 20 to 25 very unique kind of camera ready images for the book.
That's great. That's great. Probably I will see something on the vinyl. The vinyl is going to come
Mhm.
out. There is a lot of pages inside the vinyl.
I think there is. Yeah, I'm looking forward. It looks cool. I haven't seen a copy of the vinyl release yet. So, but I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
Okay.
Dude, I love you so much for asking him that question too. When I was watching that live, I watched that interview live when you did it, and when I heard you ask that question, I was just like, "Oh, I love you so much. Thank you for asking that." Because, and I did the same thing. I had to watch your interview with Nick and everybody um uh as a playback because unfortunately my my job required me to work a weird schedule that week, and so I was not able to see it live. But I remember when I was watching all those images, I was just like, "Yes, he asked the good questions. I'm so happy."
These are
Oh,
the
let's
one
see.
I'm sharing now is the Hell Gillis, the Alistair Gillis concept for the Book of the Dead. You can find it on its site.
Hmm.
They are not screen accurate, obviously, because these are concept, but they were used
Now,
for the book
interesting
itself.
thing about this particular concept work that did not make it to the final book. Look at the distressing in the spine itself, where the bend is in the book. Notice how the strands from the cover to the spine, that's something you see in modern binding. What that is those are fibers that connect the pages to the spine itself. And when a
Yeah,
book that's new tears, you get that kind of striation. They did not do that in the one in the film because that is one solid piece of latex wrapped all the way around. But initially, they wanted to have something where the spine is coming off, but spines from books that are thousands of years old, if you've studied old books, particularly old Bibles and old Qurans and things like that, they don't have spines like that. That's not the way that spines look. So I find that kind of concept artwork always super interesting to me because you kind of look and you always see some weird things. Um, and it's always interesting to spot people who know bookbinding and who don't. And when you see like new things like that, my guess is somebody that this particular artist took a picture of an actual distressed real book and then digitally painted the Necronomicon over it to create the concept he was looking for. That's a guess, but I see things like that immediately and it just pops out in my mind where I'm like, that right there.
yeah.
But
Al told me that usually it's not just drawing, but it is a mix of 3D and drawing. So probably that could
yeah,
happen. Yeah.
but it looks cool like that, I will say. Like it adds just that little bit of extra age when that spine is coming off like that.
Uh,
Um,
I'm working hard to get the prop master, but I'm pretty sure I will not get her. Is a girl. But if I can get the prop master, I sure I can give you some more
Let me
insight.
tell you, hey, I've said this to you repeatedly. I prefer to have replicas because I'm paranoid that if I get a screen use something, I'm going to break it or damage it. So I'm much happier with lineage replicas and stuff than I am with the real thing. I had a real screen used KOS ring, and I gave it to a collector in trade for a replica ring of something that I really wanted because I knew it was in good hands with the collector. I'm not somebody who should have real stuff. I would break it or I'd modify it. I like replicas.
Uh, I own two rings and the
Oh, I
key
know you do.
and the no, I don't remember the necklace, but
Yep.
I still have the wall Dalton costume in a
Yeah.
closet.
And
In a
and
closet.
I want to say this on your show because I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but when I got a hold of the screen used KOS ring, it had the ring cap and it was for a secondary character, so the ring band was not fully completed. Your completed Dalton ring is what Kurt used as a reference to complete that ring that we use in the Knights of Sumeria. So when we finally were able to produce rings for the group, which came out both in resin and in pewter, they would not have been completed without your help. So you were a huge part in helping the community have a completed Trifari and a completed KOS ring accurate to size. You provided me with photos and measurements and everything that I needed with no hesitation, and the community benefited for it. So publicly, I want to thank you for all the help you've given me and the group helping the community grow our collections because it
Thank
was
you very
very,
much.
very important.
And I own one of your resin rings. And
Yeah, right, you
if
do.
you put close to the original one, except for the the fact that the original one shine a little bit more because it's not resin, but it's normal, it's metal.
Cheers,
I mean,
Janelle. Yeah, I mean, like I said, Kurt did a great job with that sculpt. It was unfortunate that somebody recently,
solid, right?
well, somebody recently, they didn't steal it. What happened was a person who I will not name because I don't name people that I kick out of the group. Asked me when they got theirs if they could mold it to make their own mold because they wanted to make a silver ring for themselves. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, it's your ring. You can mold it off if you want, but you can't give it to other people. That's not your artwork, bro. That ring is sculpted by Kurt, and Kurt still sells them, so you shouldn't do anything with that. Well, he sculpted a bunch and gave some out to some people, and then he just recently tried to sell off a bunch of his blanks on eBay. And that's always distressing when I see that because it's one thing if Kurt gave up and he doesn't make them anymore, nobody makes them. Then maybe you message Kurt and you say, "Hey man, you're not making this ring anymore. I have a mold of it. Do you mind if I keep making it for people?" You do the right thing. You ask the artist, "Do you care if I keep going?" Um and if they say no, then you don't do it. But you don't just do it on your own and just assume, well, why do I need your permission? There is honor amongst thieves, as they say, and so there is an etiquette to the prop making community because what we do is all black market. We all know this. None of us are walking around with a license. Stars knows that I make the Aved Necronomicon. I've sent it to them on Twitter back when I was on Twitter. They knew I made the book. They weren't going to sue me. They didn't care. They had no intention of making the book. But if they made the book and then were like, "Hey, you stop because we're going to make one and sell one and we don't want you cutting into our deal," I would have stopped. But when you do these things and you make replicas for people and it's not your IP, you do sort of have to understand that what we do is not exactly appropriate. It is necessary in some cases if you want to own these things, but you don't steal from each other,
Yeah, yeah,
honor
I agree.
amongst thieves, as they say. So we can't get too precious about it because we're technically not allowed to do it. We have no illusions about that. People who claim they have a business or that they do this for a living, well, unless you got a long list of licenses you pay for, you don't do it legally. So don't come at me with that crap. We all do this on the down low. And most studios will turn the other way because it's not worth the litigation to come after us. But Tom was one of those guys who did come after people. And when he asked me not to do it, well, he didn't ask me, he told me, I stopped. I said, I won't touch your artwork. I'm not going to touch your stuff. That's totally fine. What am I going to tell him? No. But when he lost the license and it moved to Studio Canal, I revisited the idea of making Tom Sullivan based work again. And I'm sure he's not happy about it. But at the end of the day, that's really Studio Canal's problem if they want me to stop doing it, not Tom's anymore. And so, is it appropriate that we do these replicas and things like that? I don't know. I don't know if it is or it isn't, but here's what I know. We as fans want these things. I have the ability to create them at an acceptable level. I'm willing to make them for the community at a price that is reasonable and covers my costs and my time. And Tom is not. If he was still making his replicas, I wouldn't do it. But he's not. And so I feel like I do it because when I want a thing, I can usually find it. I recently came into possession of 1984's Excalibur sword. Somebody makes that. Like, I wanted that when I was a kid. When I was a baby, I wanted that sword. I now own that as an adult. And I am thrilled that I own it because some unlicensed maker made that sword. The people who own the license for it don't make it. The people who own the IP don't make it. So we can't have it unless you can build it yourself. Well, some other dude built it because he knows how, and I bought it from him. Like, this is why we do what we do. We're just fans who want to own a small piece of that thing we love. It has nothing to do with, trying to make
Feeling,
money
yes,
off of
yeah.
it or steal it. We just want to own the thing we love that we saw on the movies. Because I have the ability to make this stuff, I've sort of been thrust into a position where I'm doing it. I mean, I make good money at my job. I don't do this for a living. I don't make a ton of money doing this where I'm like buying all these props and everything like that. I do pretty well. I do this because I appreciate the fact that people really love these things and they love these books. Well, maybe not the Aved book. But I do it because I feel like I'm filling a void that was there when I got into prop collecting. I couldn't, you remember this when we were younger. We couldn't get all this stuff. It's easier now than it's ever been, and that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
But it was hard. And so because I can do it, I keep doing it. And it's a great personal stress to me. I'd much rather be hanging out with my wife when I come home from work. I don't want to go down in my dungeon and make the 40th version of a book. But I do it because every time I give somebody a new book that's finished, they're seeing it for the first time. And that feedback I get reminds me like we're doing a good thing for the community. Like Evil Dead is alive and people, I mean, Evil Dead 1 and 2 are over 40 years old. People still want these things even though that's that old. Like that's how important it is to people, and I get to be somebody who keeps that alive for the community, and I'm appreciative of that. So I do put the time and effort in that it takes, and guy when I get down and I think I can't do it anymore, guys like Ryan and guys like Brett, they and Kurt, well, not so much Kurt, he's like, quit, get up, give up, be done. But Brett and Ryan, they kind of be like, dude, the community needs it. Come on, bro. You're the only one who can do it. Do it for the community. I'm like, oh, all right. So that's the stuff that matters. And I'm telling you, man, there are days where I don't want to do this anymore. I really don't. Like, I just don't want to make another book. But when I see interviews like with Lee Cronin and how he's talking about working on the books and with the makers and stuff, it just fills me back with that. I want to go in the studio and make it right now. Like, and that was something that I loved about Evil Dead Rise. Lee really understood that the book needed to be a character in the movie and that those images directly affected what was happening on screen, just like in 2013. I loved how important the book was to the story, and that makes me want the book even more. That I just
yeah.
love that about the Evil Dead books. The book is so important to the story. It interacts with the story. And I just love that more so than I love most other book props. I mean, and I have a Grail diary. I have the Darkhold from, WandaVision. I have I have the Book of Ashanti from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I have a ton of Harry Potter on-screen books that I made myself, but none of these books are as important and pivotal to the plot in the way that like the Necronomicon is. And I
Yes,
think
yeah,
that's one of the
I agree.
things that I really like when I make the book is that you really feel like those pages, the inside of that book matters. And you've got to make those pages good. You've got to make those pages right. They have to look right. They have to feel right. They have to smell right. All of that matters because it's not just the cover, it's all of it. All of it tells the story of Evil Dead. Everybody really understands the lineage of those artwork pieces and those pages. And so you really do have to take that time. It takes a long time to make a book really well, and I can do it pretty quick, but it's been a very rewarding process, even though it's taxing. And I absolutely love how supportive the community has been in
Yeah.
helping me make them better. Like it's been feedback, some of it's critical, but in a positive way. It's always change this, tweak this, try this color, do this differently. And I think we've gotten to a place where these are some of the best replicas you'll ever see, but I do hope that somebody out there does better than me one day. I'm still waiting for that guy to come along or that lady to come along or that they to come along and completely shut me up and make me look bad because I'll
Let,
buy
let,
that book myself. I
let, let-
I'm waiting for the next great bookmaker to come along. And I've tried to take a few people under my wing and help them along too. I think there's an up and coming person doing pages who's going to shock a lot of people when they're ready to put their set out, but I hope one day somebody comes along and really blows me away with how good they are. And maybe the Evil Dead Rise book will be the first time we see somebody do that. But until then, I guess I'm the guy. So I guess I'm the one who's got to do it for all you guys.
let's hope that there will be not any real dark one that bind book in human flesh and
Let's
ink it
hope
in blood.
not. I got to tell you though, if you did you see episode 8 of Brett's RIP series on his YouTube channel?
I've seen one of them, but I don't know. I don't know what
Watch the
it is.
most recent one. I'll plug his show right now. He reads from all three books. And I'm telling you, some of the effects that Paul Rutherford, Rufus, and all those guys did on that episode looked really convincing, and I was like, oh, maybe that is what happens when you read from the book. It was pretty creepy, man. I highly recommend you check that out if you haven't. It was a really beautiful fan film, and I think my artwork is on display in it. I did the pages, so I'm a little biased, but I thought they did a great job over at mostly I think that was Ghost Speeders that was running that, but they did a great job.
I would like to share a little piece of the previous live for the ones didn't see it when we talk about the page of the Necronomicon,
Oh
just
yeah, dude,
a
show that
couple of
clip.
minutes, because it perfectly fit with our conversation. So
Yeah, dude.
uh, just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little.
By the way, you can feel free to cut me off and tell me to go to bed anytime you're happy. We've
No,
been
no, no.
rambling
Don't
for
worry.
like
Don't worry.
rambling for like 90
On the
minutes.
contrary, tell me when you are done. You are enough on this. Okay, here it is. Okay. For the one that didn't which didn't follow this one, it was a live with Link Choi and Alistair Gillis. Alistair Gillis is a concept artist. Link
Yeah.
Choi is a Necronomicon page drawer, literally, and he illustrated the page from Evil Dead Rise and Ash vs
David.
Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Yes, Alistair Gillis. At the end, I discover at the end of the live, he drove some of the hero page of Rise, and in fact, at the end of the live, that I'm going to link in the conversation there. We talked. Practically we put on the movie, and we talked about the final, the ending title, and we stopped and commented each pages of that, and it was pretty funny because it come out which would draw then and when and etc etc.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that stuff. I learned a ton of new stuff about pages from this live interview that you did with them. So I was really loving this interview.
Here it is. No, it's pretty the same. Okay. I'm going to download it and show it on the. Okay, it is better. Okay, share. Okay, here we are. So this is. Can you explain? This is the initial design of a page.
Yes. So I just wanted to show the very early sketch of this picture
Mm-hmm.
and what the final thing looked like.
Okay, so this is the early sketch. And this is, I suppose, come out from a discussion with the director or stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, so Lee already knew what he wanted, and then it took me a few attempts to get it right.
okay, so this one at the end we count this one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And what about all this stuff written here? I mean, there is some meaning, or just let's say with written stuff with no sense, the stuff in here.
Oh, this is absolutely the correct Necronomicon language that is very secret.
Uh-huh. And it is, so it is some kind of let's say font you realize it by your end. It is completely unmade. Or
yes, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think here's the process, and for me it started with it was Tane Williams actually who did the text in the Ash versus Evil Dead version. So he kind of came up with the alphabet for that version.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I did for that version was a lot of copy and pasting what Tane did, but also doing more writing of my own by using his alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think his alphabet was also referencing Tom Sullivan's work from the very beginning.
Possible, because I remember that the Tom Sullivan glyphs are meaningful. I mean, there is a meaning if you watch carefully the pages. So this one become this one, let's say, It's fun to
Yeah.
see all these tests. It's like I come even from a website designing career in the past, and it reminded me a lot of the lorem ipsum, placeholder.
Laura
Yeah,
Mipsum.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Forgot about that.
It's fun to see a Necronomicon page lorem ipsum style.
Yeah, this is the Sumerian lorem ipsum.
Yeah, exactly.
Sumerian Laura
Very
Mipsum.
ancient, man.
Yeah. It's come. I mean, even Sumerian demons need some kind of placeholder.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's
Okay. It was fun. It was fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love those images too. I was like trying to blow my screen up. I'm like, what is it? Yeah, Laura Mipsum. I forgot all about that. Yeah, I did 2 years of computer programming at Georgia Tech, and Laura Mipsum was all the placeholder text. And briefly, when I was doing graphic design for Us Weekly magazine, my job was to like edit all the pictures of the Kardashians and stuff, so they didn't have cellulite and all that crap. And then they would drop in placeholder text. So Laura Mipsum was all over that magazine until the text guys put their actual text in. So I'm familiar with. I've had my share of Laura Mipsum in the past. But yeah, I loved hearing their process and stuff. And for people who do not know, Juan from Elder Props is sharing Necronomicon stuff again after I kind of busted his chops a little bit. I'm like, dude, put out new stuff. Like, come on, you can do better than that. And so he just shared today his first set of Evil Dead Rise artwork.
Cool.
And he has completely recreated the text into a font because he knows how to build his own fonts. And so he is reproducing all that text in his artwork via his font and whatnot. So he's going to be releasing some artwork that's not exactly 100% accurate. He doesn't like to do 100% accurate. He likes it to be his own interpretation of the work. So if anybody wants to hit him up and be like, "Hey, I can help you make it more accurate," he don't want to do it. I've had that conversation with him, so don't worry about it. But you're going to get some access to some really nice free Evil Dead Rise artwork from Juan, and he is putting that out on Elder Props page. If you don't follow his Facebook page, go ahead and follow Elder Props on Facebook. You'll be able to get an update on Necronomicon artwork every Monday, and then randomly throughout the week he does additional Necro posts. And today was his first that I've seen of Evil Dead Rise. So.
Okay. I am sorry. I was searching that, but I don't found it. I know the site. However, this one. I suppose it is this one. The site. Just a moment. I'm going to share it.
Elder Props.
This one. It's arriving.
It's arriving.
This one, right?
That's the one.
Yes. In fact, here it is the coming soon.
The coming soon. Yep, he's got a couple up there for. He also has an entry for the Creep Show book, which some people asked about. So Juan has been a staple in the community. If you bought a Necronomicon on Etsy, it's got his pages in it. They were free. They were out there. Everybody and their brother uses them. I don't like that people sell them because he gives them away for free. I think it's kind of crappy to just print out his pages in black and white and throw them in a book and claim it's yours. That's not cool, but people do it. Juan doesn't seem to mind, so if he don't care, then I don't care. But everybody and their brother knows Juan's pages. He's done a great service to the community, making paper book files available for people to put into books. If the guy ever did an indie Grail diary, I think he'd nail just about every book I'd ever want somebody to do. So cheers to Juan for all the service he's done for the Evil Dead community and making all those pages free. That's a lot of work. That's tens of thousands of dollars of graphic design work that he just gives away for free because he feels like it. So that's a good dude right there.
Yeah, absolutely. He did a very good job here.
Yeah, he's really good. He knows his stuff.
Before leaving, let you go. I mean, you showed us all the books. You have a ton of books.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I missed any. I think I showed them all.
While I was talking to you, I remind I have in my drawer this one. This is done by an Italian artist called Enrico De Palma.
Lab 78.
No, Lab
one.
70. He did two Lab 78. This is called Enrico De Palma. I use this picture to have a photo with. I have a photo with Ray Santiago I have this picture in which he hold this, and this is fully in latex because when it was completely stitched. Now it was in the drawer. I have to
Yep.
detach
You
it.
plasti dip the back of that so it don't do that. Yeah, Kurt actually sculpted one as well. He only made 3. The completed one, I believe, that I had, which is going to be featured in my Evil Dead music video, which at some point I will finish, which is a cover of a Ghost song with Evil Dead lyrics in it. And my guitar player solos as Pablo, and he wears that mask in the music video. That particular mask, I believe, is in Adam's possession right now. I think I gave that to Adam. And then I have 2 more, actually, which I haven't finished and I haven't given away yet. So there are actually 2 more of those from Kurt, and there will be no more made that I will have that I will eventually distribute to the community. So Kurt himself went in and sculpted that mask too. So I even have the Necro mask, and that is a really good one. I forgot that was Rico's. That's a great sculpt.
Do we know if someone else who got the original from the
I did know who got the original. The name escapes me, but I did find them on Instagram at one point, and I'm like, "Oh, you got it!" And I remember I reached out to them and asked for some photos and stuff. I never got a message back. Not everybody who gets the screen use stuff is very helpful. Chris Hardwick, very famous Chris Hardwick from Talking Dead on AMC, has one of the Hero Aved books, and I asked him if he would be kind and film any of it. Take a photo, take a video, anything. And he didn't. But when Lucy Lawless came to his house for his podcast, he busted out that book and talked about it all day long on the podcast, but he wouldn't take photos of it for anybody. That kind of made me sad because I know where one is and I know that it's there and we can't see it. Really bust my chops about that. But yeah. Oh man, what a great photo.
Yes. This was me with that and Race Santiago.
Wow, you guys are about the same height, huh?
Yeah. He's more. I am 1 meter and 72 centimeters, so I'm pretty small. I suppose even Lindsay Farr is not too high because
no, I don't think so. I think in English units he's like 5'9". So that would be my metric is not so good. I'm good with I was a pole vaulter, so I do metrics, but I'm good like 0 to 80 centimeters, and then I really don't know metrics until I hit 4 meters, and then everything above that I can translate that into English. But anything in between that I can't do. I just know that 2 meters is about 6'6", and so like 1'8" is oh man, yeah. So interesting. Yeah, it's a great mask that Rico put out. I really like that one. It looked like leather. He did a really good paint job with it. It really does look like a leather mask.
Yeah. I can even wear it, but it's a little bit stitchy, so I will not wear it.
So just take. I don't know if you have it in Italy, but we have Plasti Dip, black Plasti Dip. Just take the back of it, spray it with black Plasti Dip, let it dry. You can wear it on your face, no issues. If you do 2 or 3 layers, you're fine. The other thing you can do if you're really concerned is you could take a cloth, a very, like a black cotton-based linen or something, and just contact cement that onto the inside and then cut out the excess, and then that will sit nicely. Just make sure you wash it because that fabric will absorb your sweat and that can rot the latex quicker. So, make sure you have a good supply of isopropyl alcohol to rubbing alcohol to get rid of it. But I recommend the Plasti Dip. It saves all my latex masks. So really, really good stuff. I recommend that. That's what I use on my covers.
Can you see there? It's a little bit far. The one near the helmet is the Alterian ash. The Alterian Studios ash is going into pieces.
Oh my God! Look at
that. Wait a moment.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it down. Just a moment.
Oh,
just a moment.
Oh, be careful with it. There's a kitten. Hello, kitten. Oh wow!
It's just a mask. It's not the real props.
Oh, that poor bastard is starting to rot.
Yes, it's the Alterian. Oh my God.
we got the tag on it too. That's an old school
Yeah.
collector right there,
Yes,
man.
yes. It's very old. It's
Yeah,
breaking into pieces.
yeah, yeah. That's a shame when you see that, but um, wow, what a really cool piece. So I don't know if you know this or not. I will not share names because I don't know how much of this they want out in the world, but one of the group
Mm-hmm.
made a contact because some of the guys in the group actually restore screen used pieces for people,
Mm-hmm.
and it puts them, their talent is kind of known now, and so it puts them in contact with some collectors and some people in the industry on the DL. Got in touch with somebody who just so happened to wander into a container unit back in the 90s and get their hands on the original mold for Evil Ash's face and Evil Ash's helmet.
Wow.
Well, said person in group got a pull from that. So that means that somebody in the KOS has a lineage Evil Ash face and a lineage Evil Ash helmet, which may or may not find its way out into the world at some point. We'll see if that happens or not. But in terms of preservation, one of the things that we do in the KOS on the down low is we collect and preserve in digital file format when possible all of the screen used lineage props so that they never go away. They may not ever get out into the community, which is fine. But should somebody ever say, you know what, we're going to make another Army of Darkness, I wish we had the original molds. Well, we've got the next best thing. So for posterity reasons, we want this stuff preserved and kept. So scans and things of a lot of lineage props are finding their way into a little library that will just make sure they never ever are lost. Because as you've seen with latex, and by the way, just for sake of argument, put a plastic bag over that styrofoam head and then stick the mask on it. That styrofoam is just sucking all the moisture out of that mask,
Okay.
which is why
Okay.
it's rotting so quick. So do not put latex masks directly on styrofoam.
Okay. Thank you for
Yeah,
making me
for
know.
sure.
Yeah.
But I will say that these things do exist, and every once in a while we're lucky we find them. You know, guys like Ray McIver walk into a store. Oh, is that an Evil Dead 2 chainsaw made of foam? Can I have that? Like, guys in the group and ladies in the group have found these props, and you know, with the glory of 3D scanning, we can scan these things now and preserve them in the computer so that they don't die and they don't ever rot and they don't ever disappear. And so that's another little side project that some of the Ghost Speeders and some of the KOS do now is preservation. And like I said, even with no intent of distribution, the fact that it's being saved and it's being put into a library so that it doesn't get lost is just great. You know,
Yeah.
so that means that work that those artists worked on will never fully disappear, and that's great. I think that's a
Yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Well, let's just think that the Robin McLean chainsaw was used as base for the chainsaw in the Ash vs Evil Dead.
I
I
know.
was talking to Nick Bassett the last time. He showed me a picture in which he was holding in hand the
Yeah.
Robin McLean chainsaw.
Yeah, when I
And
had Brett make me my Brett's Groovy chainsaw, which is the only chainsaw in the world that is as good, if not better, than screen used chainsaws, we used all Rob McLean parts and everything. So the saw that Brett made for me is as close to a screen accurate prototype as you can actually get. And Rob was very generous with those parts during COVID, busted out his molds and put those out for people. So we were able to get some really nice saws made. And I mean, I don't have to build a Brett's saw making ability up. Everybody knows his saws are the best. But I got to tell you, every time I look at that thing, I just want to quit making props because I'll never make anything as beautiful as that saw. I'm like, oh God, that's really perfect, isn't it? I quit. Uh, but yeah, that I mean, I saw that photo of Nick with one of Rob's out of the box saws, and it's incredible. Like, to think that fans helped make canon saws. Like, the saws came from fans. Like, that's so amazing to me. That's like when you find out that the robots in Star Wars, the droids, R2D2, was built by fan droid builders. You know, they brought in fans to make the R2D2s for the sequel trilogy. Like, that's so cool to me. Like, that's just amazing. And now Rob saws are canon. They are the official saws of Ash vs. Evil Dead.
this is the saw that Rob made for me in the 2013.
from Evil Dead Chainsaws.
Yes, yes, exactly. It was one of the
Ooh,
last he did. I have it in my closet too.
it's beautiful. Nice Evil
Yeah,
Dead 2. If you want an upgraded, I know you don't want to change it, but if you want, Chris Pollock is currently not making his Evil Dead 2 grills, but I am currently holding his molds for him until he's back with a shop, and I'll return those to him. But if you need a nice, really good looking, screen accurate, in my opinion, screen accurate Evil Dead 2 grill, I do have Chris's molds, and I can get you one. So I'm sure Chris would not mind you having one in your collection for your Evil Dead 2 chainsaw if you want one.
oh, thank you very much. Thank you, mate.
So yeah, I think it's really amazing how the people who are carrying on Evil Dead have embraced the people that have kept it alive for so long, which is the loyal fans, how they've involved us, how they've constantly delivered for us. They've never given up on the franchise. They've always tried to reinvent it or push it forward. And the people like Lee Cronin who are coming to the franchise now are fans themselves and
Yeah,
adding new
exactly.
elements. And even the guys at Dark Horse and the guys at Boom Studios and who are doing the comic books, there's some great stuff in those comic books and some really unique weapons designs and things like that that nobody really talks about, like cybernetic robot Ash and things like that. Like there's some really cool stuff that have made their way. The video games don't get talked about a lot, but even the guys who just came out with Evil Dead the game, what an amazing fan service that was. And guys
Yeah,
like Peyton Sabo who are building the unique weapons from that game. You see fans now doing that. I just think that the Evil Dead community is such an interesting community because it reminds me a lot of the Firefly community, where there wasn't a lot there to offer in terms of what it is, but because the fan support was so strong and so rich, just all these things keep existing. Like Firefly has a board game. Name one other one season, 13 episode show with a movie and a board game. Like it's just amazing what fan support can do when the creators really embrace it. And so that's what's really cool about Evil Dead to me, is that we seem to be able to keep breathing life into this thing since 1981, which is kind of cool.
yeah. Brett is confirming. The Evil Dead community is
Oh, Brett's
absolutely
here. I thought he'd be editing his bloopers. What's up, buddy? Yeah, if you haven't seen his oh wow, Freya says something nice too. Cheers, Freya. Don't know Freya, but we'll say hi just the same.
Ciao, Freya.
Ciao, Freya.
And we were talking about the book with the tongue. I found this picture.
Yeah.
I had
You found
I
the
have a
picture?
I have a Tom a tiny statue sold by Tom Sullivan back in the
Yeah.
days.
He had mini ones. Yeah, I remember that.
This one.
That's Tom's, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like
Okay.
this size.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
It's pretty zoomed out.
I believe it's Horror Show Art on Instagram. I believe that is the handle. He makes one of those. Peyton Patron makes one of those with the eyeballs and the tongue, which is hollow in the back. It's just a display piece. And there's Peyton right there. And he has one of those with the tongue and the eyes, full sized. So if you want one, Peyton's your guy. He'll hook you up. Brett says he posted bloopers the other day. It's on YouTube now. All right, man. I'll check it out. I've been working my ass off, so I haven't noticed, but cool deal. Well,
Well,
unless you got any other questions, my friend, I think we can call it an evening. This has been
yeah,
really,
yeah,
really fun.
absolutely. It was the longest live I had
Oh
until
God,
now.
was it? Did I talk the most? Great.
No,
The
but
guy
it
with the
was
least
very.
amount of talent did the most talking.
I mean, it's very fun because for the one that are following, let's say I am Italian, you will understand from my speech because sometimes I stutter, sometimes I stop. But usually when I did when I do these lives in Italy, it's almost night or early morning. For example, now are four past half 4 in the morning here.
Yeah.
And
Jeez, 4 in the morning where you
but
are.
before I'm starting the live, it's something like I'm dying, something like. When the live starts, the stuff that come out is so interesting. that I wake up and then probably when I will shut down the live,
Then you're gonna pass right out.
I
Yeah.
will. Yeah, I'm going to pass out. Right, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
man. Well,
It was a pleasure to have you, and I hope there will be other occasion
yeah,
because
absolutely.
let's say I'm trying, but it's a very hard work.
Yeah.
I'm trying to let's say how can I say it to have one live per week, and
Just
let's
a
say
tall order. Yeah.
I'm a sort of stalker because I write to a lot of people, a lot of person, and for example, now I am in touch with some guys that bring out the musical, and
Oh, nice.
I'm trying to set up something with them.
Okay.
As long say AG AFTRA, I don't know if it's
SAG-AFTRA. Yeah, that's the
after.
union in
Uh,
America who governs actors
yes,
for stage and screen. Yeah,
as soon the strike will end, I hope it's soon. It will
sure.
end soon. I mean, with the right, I mean, with the right times for the actors, because I support their cause. I think it is right.
Yeah, I think they should get
Uh,
paid. Well, the ones
as,
who get paid crappy should get paid. That's for sure.
yeah, and but I am in touch with some nice actor from the franchise that we love a lot
Ah.
to bring him here. He is waiting for the. He's a man. He's a guy.
Why do I get the
He's-
distinct feeling you'd have to get him off a surfboard in order to get him on your show? If you're interested in Evil Dead the musical stuff, you might want to try reaching out to Christopher Hamilton. He portrayed Ash in Evil Dead the
I
musical
know,
in
I
the
know,
production,
I
so
know, I know.
he'll talk all day for you. So he's the guy you can always get on your show if he's available, and he's got a lot of connections with helping drive Evil Dead the game. So I think he'd be a wonderful guy to talk to about the Evil Dead community. He's super active in it. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you're looking for context,
I
he'd be
know
a
too.
great guy to talk to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah, man.
the thing is I'm trying to bring content, but it's hard.
Hmm.
However, as soon I find connection between arguments, between topics, maybe I can invite again people I have already had
Sure.
because maybe there can be interesting connection. I mean, other stuff we can explore, etc. So,
For
I mean,
sure. Well, you know me. If you're talking books with anybody or artwork, you know I'll pop on. But yeah, man, I just want to say I think it's great. I know you're trying to do it every week. That's a tall order, but I wish you best of luck. So far, you've knocked it out of the park with every episode of your show that you've done. Like I said, I think your English is phenomenal, and so I have no problem following along with what you're doing. I love that you've had, I think, a guest from a different country every single show you've done so far, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken. So
yeah,
you're
yeah.
worldly, which is really cool. But keep doing what you're doing, man. It's creating great things for Evil Dead fans to talk about. I'm learning something new about Evil Dead every show you do, which is so cool. So thank you so much for doing it. And thank you for having me.
And thank you for being here because
And
you
Ryan
show a
would have
lot
been here if he had the ability. I promise you. Next time, I'm sure if there's any reason that we can get Ryan on, anytime you want to have somebody who's a fan who can give great context, Ryan is a great guest. He's got that smooth, beautiful voice. You'd love to have him as a guest. So if you have an excuse to get Ryan on the show, man, do it. He's great to talk to.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so pissed off to have did the wrong scheduling because
It's
I was completely confused by from New Zealand.
I understand. It's totally cool, man. Well, like you said, it doesn't have to be a one-off thing. We'll find another chance to get together and talk again.
Okay,
All right.
so thank you everyone that is following. This is I think the live with most follower for now. I
Cool.
mean, I have not great numbers, so I mean, we are not a channel with a lot of followers, but I really love there are a lot of people following and interacting with this particular live. And I would like to thank you everyone. If you have time, give a look to the previous one because there is a lot, as Al said, there is a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, I
Yeah.
learned a lot of stuff in the previous live. For example, one that is very particular is the one about the nasty movies. For that, I learned a lot of stuff before the live itself because I read this book. I suggest you to read this one, Dead Leaves.
Okay.
It's a romance about some guys in the 80s in the UK that try to find a VHS of Evil Dead, but they cannot because it's banned, and police go against them to when they find the movie, because it's a real story. I mean,
Wow.
the police raided the VHS store because Evil Dead was banned. So there is a lot of nice story
Cool.
to find in the channel. I'm going to again send the link there just to
Absolutely. And if anybody was curious, this is not my AVED book. This is actually going out to someone who placed an order last year for this. So people who are wondering, like, hey, where's my AVED book? I'm still making them. Here's one. It's going in the mail. They're getting done. Don't don't worry. They're getting done. Some people go on my YouTube, Gothman's Epic Stuff, and they see all this other stuff that I do videos on and things like that, and they're like, "Well, when is he making my books?" Believe me, it's hard to make my own content and also make all the books, but I'm doing it. They're getting there. There's proof. So there's one. So yeah, man, I'm gonna head out. It's about 10:30 or so here in America. So I'm gonna go to sleep, wake up, and go to work tomorrow.
Yes,
Your
yes,
crazy ass is up at 4:30 in the morning in Italy. I don't
yes.
know what you're gonna do.
I
So.
am in vacation. This is
Oh,
the
you're on
trick.
vacation. Well, that makes me
Yeah,
feel a
I am
little
on
better.
vacation. Yeah,
All right,
this is
cool,
the
man.
trick.
Well,
Okay, it was a pleasure. Thank you
an
again.
absolute
And
pleasure, my friend. Thank you for being such a great staple of the Evil Dead community. I appreciate your membership in the Knights of Sumeria as well. And like I said, to everybody who paid attention, keep supporting the podcast. It's awesome. And I look forward to the next guest that you have.
absolutely. Goodbye, everyone. Bye
Bye,
bye.
guys.
Bye bye.